Daredevil, the director's cut, is better than the theatrical version. You know it. I know it. We've heard it all over YouTube. There's tons of other videos about it, but why is it better? What are the specific differences between the two? And why would we consider it to still be a good adaptation of Matt Murdock? That's what we're going to cover today. I'm Ben Wan, and this is Superhero Stuff You Should Know. Welcome, everyone. We're continuing our coverage of Daredevil, the Man Without Fear. And he is born again on Disney+, and so is our show, as it's the end of an era and the beginning of a new one for Superhero Stuff You Should Know. For those who might have missed our announcement, Andrew Bush, the founder of this podcast, has retired from Superhero Stuff You Should Know. This is bittersweet, as I fully support his decision. But at the same time, we have been on this show together for over 6 years. And so he's the one who started the show. He's the one who named it. And he is the whole reason why I got into podcasting. So, I have him to thank for this big journey that we've been on for a long time. And please wish him well in the comments, and we'll pass it along. Like I said, though, this series has been born again, and there will be some changes on this show. We have a new co-host for me to introduce. And if you're a member of our $10 Patreon tier, or you listened to our last Daredevil episode, it should be no surprise who it is. This man has been a longtime friend of the show. He loves these characters and these topics as much as we do. It is my pleasure to announce the new co-host of Superhero Stuff You Should Know, Alex Ramsey.
Whoa, hey guys. Sorry, if you guys heard it earlier, my cat, Ziggy, in the background, was making a lot of noise. She might be scraping on the door and stuff. So, hey, anyway, I'm off to a great start, but great to come on. As you see, I'm Alex, co-host Without Fear. Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited to get into this movie. We're going to talk about like memories, right? For the like my memories for the movie. So
yeah. And so the last time you guys heard Alex, we were talking about the backdoor pilot for Daredevil and Trial of the Incredible Hulk, and that episode turned out to be the backdoor pilot for Alex's debut as co-host, except it worked out a lot better for him than for Rex Smith's Daredevil. So I'm glad to have you on, man. And I'm excited to dive into these memories of Daredevil first before we go into the movie and the differences between the theatrical cut and the director's cut. So yeah, let's talk about this movie. What were your memories of Daredevil back in 2003?
Dude, just one word, evanescence. Honestly, like that that was my main memory. Like this scene with Elektra, like I'm sure we'll get into her training and everything, like that Bring Me to Life song, the My Immortal scene with her dad's funeral and everything, like me discovering alternative music. And it's way more alternative music in this movie than I realized, like on a rewatch. But like, it's of a time, and there's moments like it's definitely way more atmospheric than I remember. But I remember having a lot of fun with it, and it's it's kind of Batman like. So like, no wonder I like it. But like the whole him on the cross, everything, that's another big thing I remember. Just a lot of visuals, and this is a very visual movie, so I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah. No, I have some of the same memories. I'm holding up right now the Daredevil, the album, the soundtrack with that 2 of those Evanescence songs on there, a ton of these tracks that make it into the movie, and I listen to this soundtrack over and over and over again. So I have similar memories myself. Alternative music. Evanescence Seether is on there. We'll talk about that when their song comes up. I also kind of remember the first trailer. I know we were talking a little bit about it before we jumped on, but the teaser trailer had no dialogue. It was just action shots and like score music. And it wasn't the score from the movie. It was like this drumming type of thing. And it was like this intense. I'll send it to you afterwards, and quick cuts. And it felt very cool. But the striking image in the beginning, of course, is like panning through the gargoyles. And seeing Daredevil there, and it's almost like their version of that deleted Sam Hamm moment from Batman '89, where just like, there are gargoyles looking over the city, but one of the gargoyles moves.
It's funny.
It's there.
Yeah, it was funny. Me and you have talked off mic through messages, and I kind of made the joke too yesterday because me and you will come to the same things sometimes, like at different points, like where we were talking about like
Mhm.
both listening to novelizations and stuff, and
Mhm.
you're like, I was actually checking this out too. And so like as soon as you started saying that, I remembered the whole thing, like with the you mentioned gargoyles, and like in my head, I'm like, yeah, one of the gargoyles moved, and then you said that. So that's really we're off to a good start already. But yeah, I kind of got that too.
Mhm.
Basically, like it's well, we'll get into it too, definitely. But I guess we can talk about this now. What did you think of the dramatic zooms in this movie?
Oh, that's a good question. It has a charm to it, honestly. I can
Hmm.
see people being watching it and being just like, "Oh, this is cheesy, come on," and, like, rolling their eyes, but I kinda feel like that might have been the case in 2003 or a little bit, like, t through 2005 through 2010 when we're kind of heavily in the Nolan period, where it's like,
Hmm.
gotta be you gotta play it straight and gritty and serious, like a serious movie type of thing, but now in 2025, looking back on it, I'm like, "Oh, this makes it fun." Like,
Yeah.
the serious zoom onto Affleck's face when he's like, "Not tonight. I got work to do." And then you see the suit up. I'm like, "This is awesome."
Or with the nun's face and the with the blood and everything where it zooms in on her eyes. There's like MTV editing in here is how I describe it. Like very just like
Mhm.
almost music video like editing in this movie where it's like it's got like a style to it. You can definitely tell the Matrix came out
Yeah.
recently with some of the decisions I'm sure we'll get into. But yeah,
Mhm.
like it's definitely like a time capsule movie is how I describe it.
Yeah, and you can definitely feel the producer's hand in that with like, "No, we gotta put this in because 'cause we've got this deal with this music."
Hmm.
And a lot of this topic for today is going to be on the director's cut and the theatrical cut. And the kind of the whole reason why there are two different cuts is because the producers wanted to cut it down. They wanted it's in the featurette for the director's cut. You have the producer Gary Foster just fully taking credit for saying, "Hey, I wanted a fast cut action movie. I think the theatrical cut is better." Everyone else disagrees, but this guy thinks the theatrical cut is better and didn't think that there was room for the audience to appreciate the character moments or the deleted subplot where Matt Murdock actually has a case and has other
Hmm.
motivation for trying to take down the Kingpin and has an actual reason why the police are coming after the Kingpin at the end. Like all the stuff that hasn't make sense. So that's all in there, and yet it was all cut. It was all deleted but thankfully put into the director's cut, which I really appreciate because this is almost like an early. I mean, it's kind of awkward to say it's an early Schumacher cut because Batman Forever predates it for so long, but
Hmm.
it's one where they actually released it. They released it on home video very shortly afterwards, which is something
Hmm.
that we can't say for the Schumacher cut. Like there was something
Yeah.
to appreciate about this pre MCU era where some of these Marvel movies they had extended editions that they just released with the home video without batting much of an eye, and you could hear about it, but then see it almost immediately. It was like this and 2004's The Punisher, which we can cover another time.
Yeah.
But that's what I really appreciate, at least of this time, is they made sure to release it. And kind of like Batman Forever, we have this deleted subplot that adds a lot more to your main character, and the characterization of the main character improves. And one trivia that I thought was kind of funny is that it's got the same editor as Batman Forever. The
It's also
late
got John Favreau in it too.
That's true.
Both of them.
That's true, yeah. The late Dennis Verkler edited both movies, so I guess he was attached to, to superhero movies that just got gutted in the editing room. But that and Batman and Robin, which we know wasn't gutted necessarily in the editing room. It was kind of
Oh.
like that from the beginning. So there's no secret dark cut of Batman and Robin that we know about, at least for
That
now.
script you guys covered was actually better because at least then it had more of like the Adam West y stuff to it with
Yeah.
like the bang biff
Mhm.
pow. At least it would have still been really cheesy and stuff, but what always surprised and there's kind of moments like I was telling you about this too, and this is kind of a different thing, but I guess I can kind of segue it into this.
Sure.
Um there's like always this goofy element to like a lot of this stuff, and then like the Schumacher stuff, it's almost the opposite, where like a lot of it is goofy, but then
Mhm.
they have like these serious moments in it that are like really well done and like almost and Batman and Robin feel like they're from a different movie with like the Alfred subplot and
For sure.
everything. And I feel like with movies after that, like they would just have scenes where it would be like this like 2 point thing, but it would be like maybe like 80% right, and then they would have like a scene that was just kind of off, and like this one, it's the playground fight,
For sure.
that kind of thing. Catwoman had there was a lot of problems with Catwoman, but they had the scene where she was like playing basketball and stuff, and like
Yeah,
even
I
that
was thinking about that one.
it was just like for some reason like they liked having like sports moments in these in these superhero movies for whatever reason I can't figure out, but
Mixed
it's
with
weird.
like romance and sexual tension, right? Because she's also playing against Benjamin Bratt or something in that, and there's
She's like
also a bunch of
sniffing the
kids.
ball and everything too. Like it's like weird. It's some subtext going on there, but
Yeah.
anyway.
So
Yeah.
let's get into it.
Yeah.
I'm excited. So this opening, I know that you wanted to talk about how they did the Braille stuff because that was really cool.
Yeah, that it's funny. I had the DVD of it, and like the menus almost fucked me up for a minute because I was going in there and it would be in Braille, and I would like hit something and I'd be like, "Wait, what the hell is this?" And I would scroll down to like select something. It was cool like style stuff, but I was just like, "Wait, hold on." Like
This is for our blind audience who can totally see the DVD menu.
yeah, it was just like is this trying to confuse me? Like this productive, but
Mhm.
so like in the actual thing, like the CGI landscape was really cool. It had like this kind of like braille, like the lights of the different skyscrapers, and it
Mhm.
was cool seeing it kind of do the whole braille thing. I think that was kind of unique. I don't think I've seen that in any other opening. So like just
Totally.
kind of keeping up with the theming, because they could have just done something boring. It could have just been
Mhm.
just like normal, like
Just
black
simple.
screen,
Yeah.
white text kind of shit. But like
Mhm.
they actually went into it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I like
Yeah.
that.
The other thing I want to shout out is the score by Graeme Revell. I also have that. There we go.
Nice.
That's a little better. Yeah, by Graeme Revell. I wanted that because I really like the theme. I think it feels underrated because it's not. I'm not going to say it's as memorable as like the Batman themes or Superman, or even the Spider-Man movie from the previous year. But there's something really cool about it. It has the nice atmosphere to it, and Revell's got like different leitmotifs to it. He's got this guitar
Mm.
theme for the romance of Elektra that plays even towards the end when he thinks she's dead, but then he discovers the necklace. There's this electric guitar riff whenever Bullseye shows up. And there's like this nice piano theme to represent Jack Murdock whenever he's thinking about his dad or during the sequences with his dad. So he definitely kind of followed the whole, leitmotif thing. For those who don't know what that is, that basically means like different themes for different characters throughout the different film score. So with Superman the movie, it was like Krypton has its own leitmotif, Superman has its own leitmotif, the Superman theme, the love song "Can You Read My Mind," that's its own leitmotif, the
That's less of
villain's
a
theme
thing
song.
now, right?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like there's that as much. I think the last time I can really point to that was in the Batman. Giacchino's got the Batman theme, the Catwoman theme, the Riddler theme. Not really a Penguin theme in that movie, but his son made up for that for sure in the Penguin show.
Yeah.
8 hours of Penguin music for that one. So that's a carryover of that, and I do prefer it when
Now,
it's like
now.
that. So one of the other awesome parts of this that I knew we wanted to highlight, so let's pull this up, is this shot. This
Nice.
shot of Daredevil on the cross. This is taken from right off of the cover of Guardian Devil from Joe Quesada. And this is also a comic comparison courtesy of Batman Online. Credit to Silver Nemesis for this, but it's a great shot, and you can tell
Mhm.
they're trying to bring this image to life, and I think they nailed it.
Gorgeous shot. But yeah, I love Joe Quesada's art, and this I guess it could be a separate thing. I don't really like him as a person. I find him
Mhm.
very annoying. He was the one who famously made it to where like Spider-Man made a deal with Mephisto and
Oh, that
everything.
shit. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and so and just in interviews he comes across as obnoxious. Like that's a whole nother thing. We could definitely get into that if we have extra time later. But no, this is a great visual here.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
It's also very apparent from when we look at this that the red has been completely saturated from this. Like you got to kind of squint to see the maroon even in shots like this, because if you just look at this on first glance, it looks very red with the comic book cover, but when you look at the movie, he's practically black in the shot.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is unfortunately due to the producers. So this is kind of, for those who've seen the documentary, behind the scenes documentary, they cover how Mark Steven Johnson, the director, and James Aitchison, who was the one who designed Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man costume and then did this one, they had to fight for the color red in this because Fox was terrified that Daredevil was going to be seen as a ripoff of Spider-Man. And they're like, let's try to get him away from the red. So we might have gotten like a repeat of the Rex Smith Daredevil, or foreshadowing of the Netflix Daredevil show with the black suit, because they were considering all sorts of different things. At one point, it's even mentioned that they even considered putting him in street clothes, which sounds awful. So it's kind of a miracle we got what we got, but we do have a lot of these early looks at what could have been. This looks practically brown, and then you're pointing out the ear thing to me.
Yeah, like the whole thing with that, it definitely. So like I was gonna also say, like, obviously you guys will hear later. I have a Flash related podcast called Flashbacks, and the whole thing with like making him maroon instead of making him actually like red, like this definitely has that same kind of color, but like. I think here they're trying to, and me and you both have been reading the Frank Miller stuff. I think that they're trying to replicate the kind of like look where he has like his ears showing through it, because the costume, the mask is supposed to be that tight. Which in the comic, like I kind of tolerate, but even then, it's kind of weird to see like his actual ear like illustrated on the side of his head. I don't know if that was really a thing that Stan Lee. Or not Stan Lee, whoever the artist was.
Bill Everett.
Then did.
Yeah,
Bill Everett.
And Wally Wood. I think, because I've been reading that original run too, and it's basically like the idea that you can kind of see his ear through the cloth. So with that, you're able to sort of see that he is he's human, I guess, and that he has these other ears there. We kind of continue the ear thing with this. This is a little bit of an improvement, a little redder. I don't really like the horns on this as much. I don't know what it is about them.
I like it. That's more red though. Like
it is more red. Yeah.
That's not Affleck, is it? That's like
no.
That's like a guy.
Yeah, he's probably the stand-in. He's probably the person with the strongest jawline in the costume department that they dressed up in there.
Looks solid. I mean, not too bad.
This one less solid to me.
Listen, hold on. I like where their head's at here. At least with the first one, it looks rough as hell. But like that one with like the eyes too. Like I kind of like the look and like the kind of like how it sits on his face. Yeah, it looks rough because it's like it's kind of like a rough draft, but I'm sure like they would have refined it a little bit more. But like I don't know, like I like that. The other one next to it does look black, basically. Like it's almost like dark red to where it doesn't even look like you were saying earlier, like it's barely even registering as red at all.
Yeah, and I think sometimes he kind of looks like this in the movie, but other shots it's something that's in between the two colors that we see here that we've pulled up.
Removing the ear was the right choice, though. Ooh, I like this one.
This bandana type look, which is kind of reminiscent of Man Without Fear, the Romita look, except instead of the black suit, he's in like this red leather type of thing. So this is one possibility, except there's no horns. Well, at least not in this shot. Yeah, there's no horns because you can't see it on the other side. So
maybe
kind of just looks like some leather ninja guy.
Well, maybe because like there's no earlier stuff like in the movie, like it's just basically him wearing the costume, right? Like we don't see a moment where he's got a prototype or anything.
No.
Okay, I was about to maybe come to their defense again. It's like maybe this is like a prototype, and then like he moves on, like in the first Spider-Man where he has that really crappy looking one, and then he kind of moves on to that's also a common trope too, like the whole thing of like having the lower version. So like whenever you see the final look, it's like, wow, this looks really cool. Like that kind of vibe to it. But like, I don't know. That wait, go to the next
Let's
one.
look at this one. So clearly, I don't think this was deliberate in terms of the mask being a different color from the rest of it. It is redder. It's just it's jarring because his cowl is a different color from the rest of him.
They were in the right direction with this color, actually. Like I like this look, at least the color of it. Yeah, the other thing too, I guess we can talk about this, is the vibe of the suit. It's like kind of got like a motorcycle
Hmm.
type vibe to it, which is interesting because in the original, it's just like a traditional costume from as far as I can remember,
Hmm.
basically. Like that was an interesting take.
Yeah. I don't know how much of that is influenced by the like motorcyclists that we see, at least in the director's cut, but it does. I thought it worked for this movie.
Yeah.
Uh, this is a hooded look, which uh, it's interesting because there is a hooded version in the comics. I don't know if they were inspired by this, but in Daredevil issue number 3, he actually adds a hood to his costume and uses the hood to sort of hide his Matt Murdock clothes in it,
Hmm.
which you would think is extremely heavy because he also puts his shoes in there. So he's got his shoes dragging dragging onto his neck. But he goes up against the owl with that hooded costume. But then in the very next issue, when you have people, the Purple Man sends a whole bunch of people to attack him. They
Hmm.
like rip at the hood, and Matt's like, "This is stupid," and he removes it. And I thought that was very interesting because you would think some costume change like that would have lasted a lot longer. Like the yellow suit lasts a good like 6 issues or so
Hmm.
in Daredevil, but like 5 or 6 issues. But here it only lasts like one, and so I'm kind of wondering if they genuinely wanted to try that and then decided it was bad because they hated to draw it in, or if it's a thing where it was a deliberate storytelling device of, hey, like this is the life of a superhero. You kind of have a trial and error period with the coming up with stuff, and sometimes stuff doesn't work. I'm not sure. If Stan Lee
Yeah.
was still alive, I would have asked him that, but he probably wouldn't remember anyway if he was
Yeah.
still
No.
alive.
He's that's like I think I told you this off mic too.
Mhm.
Like this would make sense because like a lot of the time it's like his suit is kind of like a repurposed version of like what his dad wore
Mhm.
basically, and so this would kind of make sense based
Oh
off
yeah,
like
that's
the
true.
whole hooded look
Mhm.
too though. But like thinking of it practically for a second, like yeah, it'd probably keep him warm when it's like cold and rainy outside. But beyond that, like this is gonna cut his vision. It's like it's one of those
Well,
things
hold on.
too. Yeah, yeah. I was like, wait, I realized how that sounded when I said it. But yeah, like it's gonna I guess no, never mind. I was gonna say it's gonna cut into his vision, but he doesn't need it. So never mind. Take back what I said.
Well,
But
maybe it'll be in like that comic where somebody could grab it a lot easier, like
yeah,
a
like
lot
a
more
Miller.
easily. Hmm.
Speaking of Miller, with the whole like, you know what a self-respecting hood's gonna do, and just like pulls down Robin's
Yeah,
hood over his head,
I
basically.
was
Yeah,
I was
that
just
kind of
thinking
thing.
All Star. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally. This is with the hood down. Doesn't look as good when the hood's down. I mean, you've got the ears at least, but now it's just it ruins the silhouette. And I think because Andrew would talk about the sleekness of
hmm,
costumes, and he was absolutely right. I think we were always on the same page about sleekness, and the
yeah.
hood being down like this ruins the sleekness. Like you would either keep it up the entire time or just don't have it at all.
It's got kind of a fruit roll-up kind of vibe to the to the hood though too. Like it's not. I think it's also the fact that he's kind of scowling though too. It just looks immediately comedic with like earlier with the hood like this and now the hood like that. Like it's just like it's
Mhm.
like I'm serious superhero. Like I just can't take him seriously, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a weird look.
These are just images of the different versions of the mask.
Ooh, I like
This
that.
is kind of a bandana looking type of thing in the back there, so it's sort of a
Yeah.
mix of the bandana look with the horns. So maybe they were planning to add the horns to that costume
Is that
test.
what we
Again, we were
saw
looking at stuff that
earlier?
was, yeah, like we were
Is
kind of
that the
looking
same
at,
one?
yeah, but notice there's no horns.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just saying they added it to it then.
Yeah, they might have added it to it because again, we have to keep in mind these photos or costume tests. It's like everything's in process, so
Mhm.
we might be imagining what it would be like in the movie, but there could have also been some other like developments or upgrades to it before it ended up on screen.
Yeah. I like the kind of like, and I know this is just because it wasn't finished yet, but I do kind of like the whole like kind of gruff look to it, where it's got
Mhm.
like all the kind of weathering on it and stuff. Like it kind of gives it like a used kind of feel to it. Like I kind of like that
Yeah,
aspect to it. Yeah, looks
for sure.
good.
Because he's we don't do the origin in terms of his first time in the costume in this. We go
Mhm.
directly from the death of Jack Murdock to Matt Murdock's already Daredevil. Like he's already started this lifestyle. He's been doing it for a while. He's already been a lawyer for a long time. Like he's kind of in established mode. We kind of jumped into like almost Batman 89 territory of, hey, like this might be early in his career still, but we don't go through the whole how did he come up with his costume type of thing. It's all already there.
Yeah, speaking of 89, like some of
Mhm.
these shots in this movie, because I had a note about that. Like,
Mhm.
I forgot how like just like almost comic booky it is with like the dad's death in there with like the
Yeah.
silhouette of like the rose and everything, and then him running, like Matt running, and then like his jacket flying in slow motion off of him
Mhm.
and everything. Like this movie doesn't get talked enough about for just how good some of the staging is and the shadow work, like when you see like that thug running and then that huge like ominous shadow of Daredevil like
Yeah.
kind of like towering over him. Like this has like some great shots, and people only remember the playground fight. They don't remember the actual like really good like atmospheric moments like that. And I
Mhm.
think that's an underrated aspect of this movie, definitely.
Yeah, like you can look at some of these older 2000s movies and see just the level of care and composition that we maybe don't really see as much with some other stuff other than like Reeves as the Batman, where
Mhm.
it's some like beautiful shots that you can just like pause and just
Yeah.
admire for a little bit. So I think that's another underrated aspect of this is Johnson, for all his faults for being associated with something like Ghost Rider, and this is um underrated because of his ability to do that. The way that he composes the different shots, the way that he has some beautiful images. He brings to life the whole Sam Ham thing with the gargoyle with
Yeah.
Daredevil. It's amazing. So I think
He's not a
it's an
hack.
underrated aspect for
He's a good director.
sure. Just get out of his way. Clearly, when we take a look at this director's cut. So let's go into some of the major differences. One major difference that isn't really apparent in the beginning is the fact that the priest that we are introduced to
Mhm.
already knows that Matt is Daredevil in the theatrical cut, but in the director's cut, he has no idea until he takes that mask off, and so it plays off differently when you see that intro when you watch the director's cut versus the theatrical cut. If you've already like seen versions of the movie,
Mhm.
the priest's name is Father Everett, named after Bill Everett, who is the co-creator for Daredevil. He's the one who first illustrated Daredevil, the one who put him in the yellow suit. And this character had to be the inspiration for the priest, Father Lantom, in the Netflix series, because that's not an established thing in the comics. I looked it up to be like, is there like a priest that he
Oh, it's
talks
not?
to? Yeah, there's not there's a priest he tries to do a confession to in Guardian Devil, but that guy doesn't become a recurring character. So this idea that he talks to this like how he has an ally who's a father there is pretty much from this movie and then got carried over into the Netflix series. And I guess he's kind of an early substitute before you bring in Sister Maggie,
Mhm.
so who's a bigger character. So I
Yeah.
can kind of understand that. But it was also their way to pay tribute to Bill Everett. You hear Bill Everett's name as well in the director's cut as the name of a reporter reporting on the Dante Jackson case. But this is kind of a cool thing that they add to it. And then we get you had to note I see on the voiceover that we have.
Yeah. Speaking of the Batman earlier, like this like I forgot the voiceover in this. This was some good stuff, like just hearing, and voiceover is such like a hit or miss thing. Like it just
Mhm,
depends on who's doing it. But Affleck's really good at the voiceover, which sucks because I know that if he had had his own like solo Batman thing, and I'm not one of those Snyder guys that's like, oh, you need like this whole Batman, movie, and like we were robbed and stuff. But like,
mhm,
if he had had his own thing, like I could just see him like killing these like monologues and stuff. Like some of this stuff is really good, and you don't really have moments like these where
mhm,
you get into the character's head like this kind of stuff. Like it's
yeah,
something that's definitely lost in like a lot of these adaptations, and like it's a big part of the comics. It's how we get into their heads, and so like
mhm,
having this in there as not just like a framing device. Like I know the first Spider-Man does it at the beginning and end, but this one was throughout, which kind of surprised me because I'm like, they'll probably just have this at the beginning, but just having it throughout kind of helped like stitch the story together, which was pretty cool.
it's throughout at least the origin, and that's kind of where we get one of the first similarities between this and his time as Batman, because
Mhm.
Batman v Superman also starts with a voiceover from Affleck about the death of a parent, and then he also has that in in this, and he's also in a more comic accurate version of the costume than other versions in live action in both of
Yeah.
these. So it's funny to look at a lot of the similarities between this and what would happen in BVS. Not to say that they're even, the same movie, but there are some sort of weird similarities, and we'll get into it as we go further. But yeah, the voiceover thing is as well is one that I appreciated because again, back in 2003, this is a time where they were just, I think from around this time, I think they were just getting Batman Begins off the ground, or
Mhm.
Nolan was attached, but they hadn't like, gotten anyone else yet. And so the yearning for the Batman movie, a new Batman movie, a dark Batman movie, was there. And to watch this was kind of like, oh, this is sort of a substitute for that. It's not Batman literally, but it's sort of there. And then to have this gothic shot of him on the cross, and then he's got this voiceover that's kind of reminiscent of the Batman narration through a lot of detective comics. Just felt like it just added to that atmosphere. It added to the appreciation of the movie.
Well, you know what Affleck said about it to, Kevin Smith, right?
Yeah, yeah. So supposedly he took the role, other than the fact that apparently he said that he was a Daredevil fan and a fan of
Mhm.
comics growing up, but supposedly it was because he didn't think they were ever going to bring Batman back after Batman and Robin, and so this was his best shot at doing it. This would
Yeah,
be Daredevil.
which is hilarious considering how, things turned out in the future, but yeah, I always remember him saying that, and I'm like I was talking to you about this, and I think that everybody says, "Oh, Moon Knight is the Batman of Marvel." It's like, no, dude, Daredevil is the Batman of Marvel, definitely, like, just, like, a lot of similarities, like, both were trained by, like, like, went yeah, he didn't go somewhere else, but he was
He
trained
was
by,
trained.
like, someone
Yeah.
else in, like, martial arts and stuff like that, kind of same kind of thing. He's Batman. Describe him as, even though he is a lawyer, he still is Batman on a budget kind of thing is how I describe
Yeah.
Daredevil, definitely. And both are written by Miller, so, like, there's
Mhm.
definitely some connective tissue there, but
Yeah.
yeah.
You've got Frank Miller comics influencing both Ben Affleck, dark vigilante movies.
Mhm.
Here with Dark Knight Returns, obviously in BVS, and Frank Miller's run, as well as Man Without Fear and Born Again in this movie. And another thing I was thinking of too with Ben Affleck for this was the fact that he's kind of he has a kind of similar arc as well that we'll get into, but the whole like controversially kills criminals also happens in this one. So it's all sort of connected. But yeah, Daredevil for sure is the for me is the Batman of the Marvel universe, and both characters also have this thing where they've studied every martial art to the point where
Yeah.
they've developed their own style that mixes all of it. When I found out with Daredevil, I'm just like, okay, who came first with this? I got to find out, like who's established this, because obviously Batman came before Daredevil, but I
Mhm.
mean, just that specific characteristic seems like something one guy had to have stolen it from the other at
Yeah,
some point.
definitely. Did you find out, or
Oh no, I it just came to me that I don't know who started it, so maybe we'll explore it on another date.
definitely, we can definitely go to it into a
Yeah,
training of, Daredevil or something. Maybe we can make that into an episode. That'd be kinda
yeah.
cool.
So we get into the flashbacks here, and we get into probably one of the most underrated comic book castings, and maybe one of the best castings in the entire movie, which is David Keith as battling Jack Murdock. Like this guy
Oh,
nailed
yeah.
it. He if there was any justice in the world, this guy would be elevated above Marlon Brando as Jor-El, because of the fact that this guy actually seemed to give a shit about his performance more than Marlon Brando did in '78. And the scene of him walking him to bed is right out of Man Without Fear, as we were showing here with the comic slides.
Mhm.
So that also leads us to the next difference between the director's cut and the theatrical cut, which I know you have a note on here, which is that there's a small moment of cursing here.
Yeah, hold on, let me get my note here. But,
Yeah.
I was talking to you about it. Oh, I
Mhm.
lost my note. Hold on, give me one
Yeah.
second. There we
I'll
go.
set it up for you. So yeah, basically we've previously seen Matt getting into a fight with other kids,
Mhm.
and Jack sort of notices that Matt's been a little hurt, and he's gotten through something, and he asks about it, and
Oh
in
yeah,
both
here we go.
versions.
I
So, but
got
in
it.
the director's cut, there's a little bit different dialogue that wasn't in the theatrical.
Yeah. So he said, like Matt's talking to him, it's like they kept giving me shit. He's like, "Don't curse." He said, "What kind of shit?" It's great
So
stuff. I
good,
actually
so
laughed. I was
good.
like, "That's a good little moment."
There is a major part that they don't have in this from the comics that I think maybe they removed it so that Jack would be more sympathetic, which is that
Yeah.
in the comics, when Jack makes Matt promise not to get into fights, and when Matt breaks that promise and gets into a fight anyway, Jack hits him because he's so pissed that he sacrificed so much for this kid to not turn into him, that to see this kid do that was infuriating to him, and that psychologically forms Matt's desire to stick to the rules, to stick to the laws, because that's what holds people in line. But I kind of understand why you wouldn't put that in, because it's just like we're supposed to. This is within the first minute or so of meeting Jack Murdock. You don't want people to be like, "Oh, like so he had an abusive dad." Like you want people to feel for this
Yeah.
dynamic here a lot more. And yeah, Jack ends up becoming a criminal working for Fallon, but that that's different compared to him hitting a kid. We kind of have our own like weird rankings in our heads about like what
Hmm.
all the different morality type of things that are there. And I think just him hitting his son, we would have forgiven a lot less compared to him working for a criminal. So
I didn't like that. That was the welcome. Like basically, they jettisoned that whole thing. Like I didn't really like that,
mhm.
and the thing, and even that, like, because in the book, it's kind of more like it it's weird how Matt in his head is kind of just like, okay, now that I got hit, I'm gonna know that basically right and wrong, and like it's gonna motivate me to be a superhero in the future because my dad hit me, and like I'm gonna have this stringent thing about right and wrong now just because of this moment. It doesn't really like make sense. And so like I'm just like I'm fine if they remove that. Like you don't even need that. Like he could just grow as a person and see what his dad
Mhm.
did was wrong. Like the whole crime
Mhm.
element. Like you don't really need like that's one part that I'm like that didn't make any sense. Like I'm glad
Yeah.
they removed it.
I think it's also clear from the original comic that it's his dad saying, "Hey, you make something of yourself, you become a lawyer."
Mhm.
But Matt's secretly doing the fight stuff because he is his father's son. I feel like that's already ingrained in the original Stan Lee and Bill Everett comic.
Yeah.
You don't need to add an extra thing to make it more complicated. It's literally Matt Murdock is who his dad wanted to be, and Daredevil is who his dad was and who he is deep down.
Yeah.
So it's already there.
Yeah.
Uh, in this movie as well, they have a character named Fallon who it's interesting because they changed his name. In the comics, his name is Roscoe Sweeney, the Fixer, and I don't know why they changed his name for this one. It's not like Roscoe Sweeney is that comic booky of a name. There's no like alliteration type of thing like Bruce Banner that one producer from Incredible Hulk didn't want to add into it. But this
Yeah.
movie was my introduction to Margolis, who the late Mark Margolis, rest in peace, who is became more famous as being Hector Salamanca in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. So it was kind of cool.
Look at me, Hector.
Exactly. Yeah.
Classic. But
So
yeah. I
the
noticed that too. I was like, "Oh shit!" Like it's Breaking
yeah,
Bad. But yeah, yeah,
yeah,
good stuff.
yeah, yeah. And then a major part that's different from the comics that I know you have here, I'll have you take the reins on this one, is the actual origin of how he gets to be blind.
Yeah. So like in the original comics, and that they have like a thing that they do in like a lot of these adaptations where like and the other stuff too, they change it like in the Hulk, the Ang Lee Hulk, like he I forget, like that one's different too. Like they never want to do the atomic bomb drop and like him
Hmm.
saving
Hmm.
Rick Jones. But like in this one, it's they take away the heroic act of Matt saving like that old man from basically like a bunch of toxic waste falling from the back of one of the trucks. And this one, he's looking for his dad. He
Hmm.
like kind of goes over like as the guy says like, oh, he hasn't worked here in like basically like a month or something like that. And so he goes over to like this back alley and then sees his dad like roughing someone up and
Hmm.
then runs and like back near that construction area and like basically like since he runs in front of one of these like scissor lift things, like it like goes into the side of like one of the toxic things and hits his face, kind of making it the dad's fault.
Yeah.
honestly, like a little bit. Like it's one
Mhm.
of those things where it's like, I don't know, like I wouldn't have minded seeing him like save someone, but I get like maybe it's like to make it more dramatic, it adds to the dad's guilt a little bit
Mhm.
more and makes him like not want to maybe later on do like the stuff that that boxing, that fix the match, basically, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the other aspect is I think Johnson was pulling from the Spider-Man animated series because in Daredevil's guest spot there, they flash back to the origin and they have a similar thing where Matt finds out that his dad's been doing this and he runs off and that's when he like the truck swerves and there's no old man, old blind man in this one.
Huh.
It's due to that. So I think maybe they were drawing a bit from that as well. But even though he doesn't save the old blind man, he does save Stan Lee later on. So that could have been a Stan Lee cameo if they wanted to do
Yeah.
that in a more faithful version of the origin.
They that 90s show, they pull a lot of shit from there. There's
Mhm.
like obviously the Sam Raimi movie, like there's a lot of cross-pollination between the 90s stuff, like with the like basically like they take a lot, like especially in that Sam Raimi movie, there's a lot like if you
Mhm.
go back and watch that episode where they introduce the origin of the Green Goblin and everything, a lot of similarities. And I don't know, Avi Arad was behind both of them, so maybe he was kind of like encouraging them to be like, hey, make it similar to this show over here I'm working on, or maybe let's be more realistic here. Like it's
Mhm.
probably they only have so much time, so they're just like, I only got so much time to make this movie. What this is on this TV. This is what the kids are watching. I'll watch this and see if maybe I can pull some story ideas from this. So maybe it was kind
Mhm.
of that too. Who knows? But yeah,
Yeah,
definitely
maybe
a lot of origins
because you
come
you
from it.
definitely see the Batman the animated series influence as well on some of these others, right? Like
Mhm.
the Batman Begins with Crane getting doused with his own fear gas, and then seeing Batman was in the Nothing to Fear episode, but it's also in the Nolan movie. So you can definitely see that they did their homework looking at like what have other adaptations done before, because that's totally Hollywood is seeing what someone else has done first and going from there.
It's very Bob Kane too.
Oh yeah, that's true. So, another difference in the director's cut versus the theatrical is Matt has been recovering from the accident, and there's more dialogue between Jack and Matt in in the director's cut. In the theatrical, he just kind of comes in and he says, "I'm so sorry, Matty," and then they hug, and that's it. In the director's cut, Jack comes in and talks about how he's been talking to the doctor, and Matt brings up that he overheard. And this is where the dialogue is a little weird because he's about to tell Matt that he's blind, but Matt says, "I know, I'm blind." And Jack's like, "How do you know?" And I'm like, "I don't know, Dad. Maybe because I can't see."
Yeah. Come on.
It should have been more like, "How could you hear? We were across the hall," or something like that. Like
Yeah.
if Matt knew something that was a little bit deeper than just he's blind, or he knows it's inoperable, like it can't be fixed, like something like that could have been more telling. But it comes off weird in the director's cut. I don't know if that's necessarily why they cut it, but it's one of the few things from the director's cut that's not in the theatrical that I'm like, like I could go without that considering that was my big hiccup with that dialogue.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that. That's so funny. But like speaking of memorable moments, I still remember the radar sense in this being like really good, and like the
Mhm.
whole thing with like the little drop from the from his little like thing he's got connected to his arm and trying the IV, and
Mhm.
like that whole thing, and like just how they portray the radar sense in this is like super memorable. I
Mhm.
don't think it's really been topped, honestly. Like in the Netflix Daredevil, I think you only see one time how he sees, and it's that whole world on fire kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like that looks okay, but like I definitely do think that in this, like my one big note was the radar sense definitely holds up in this, and also
Mhm.
leads to some emotional moments later, like because obviously that's how he sees Elektra
Mhm.
in it with like the
Yeah.
rain on her face, and then when she doesn't want him to see her, like there's a moment where it's raining later and she puts the umbrella up so basically it blocks her face so that he can't see her
Mhm.
anymore, and so like that's like another cool like little dramatic moment.
Yeah. It's really it's really cool to see through Matt's quote unquote eyes in
Hmm.
this and how well they were able to do it. Where again, this is a character who's not nearly as known as Batman or Superman. So to be able to really sell that world is incredibly important, and I think they pulled it off for sure. It's underrated in terms of the radar sense.
Definitely.
Let's see. So we have the whole training montage. We kind of stick true to the original Stan Lee version as opposed to the Frank Miller version, where there's no stick. It's kind of Matt teaching himself throughout all this. And then we kind of lead to the big climactic night where there's kind of a lot of cool Easter eggs. They really went hard when it came to throwing in comic book creators in this.
Yeah. There's a lot of that in this.
So
I got some listed.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's Miller, like Mac, and then Bendis. Like there's a few of them, and there Ramita. Like that was another one. Like definitely like a lot of different names. I was like, after a while, I was like, all right, guys, like come on, like enough. Basically, like at a certain point, I was like, or no, Quesada was the most insulting one because he's like they named it after like basically this dude that was like a sexual predator or something. Like I'd be pretty pissed if I was Joe Quesada, man. Like I don't know.
You know what's worse is Joe Quesada's dad is Jose Quesada. So if anything is named after his dad, which then would make me more pissed.
Yeah, I was like, hey, come on, guys. Damn it, I'm the creative officer here.
There's some that works. So I think Miller, Mac, Bendis, that works. Father Everett makes sense. John Romita, sure. With the fighters, the other fighters is fine. But once we got to Jose Quesada, I'm like, this is getting ridiculous. Come on. Just give him a random name in this case, or somebody from the comics. Let's see. The other thing is there's kind of a resemblance as well between the guy who kills Jack Murdock in the comics, whose name is Slade, and the actor who plays Fallon's bodyguard in this. I don't know if that was deliberate, but the actor who plays Fallon's bodyguard is Jason Voorhees himself, Kane Hodder. So that's a little bit of trivia for those who are horror movie fans. And that's doesn't quite carry over into the movie because they decided to go different. They decided not to have Slade be the one who kills Jack Murdock. They instead had it be Kingpin who kills Jack Murdock, which is also a pull from Spider-Man the Animated Series.
That's where I remember it from.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I was trying to be like, was that in the comics? Like I was trying to remember, but yeah, that means Kingpin is really old in the in the future stuff. Like Duncan's probably really either that or super young whenever he does that. Then
yeah, he might have been a teenage boy, but a teenage boy who is still like over 6 feet and 200 pounds. So
speaking of 89,
could be some version like that. Yeah.
It's
apparently
like 89 influence.
Yeah, apparently that twist was also in the J.M. DeMatteis treatment, which maybe we'll cover at some point. But yeah, it did remind me of 89 for sure with you killed my parents, you killed my father, this type of aspect. Plus you've got the caricature sketch of the gargoyle Daredevil type thing, kind of similar to the Have You Seen This Man, Batman, and that sketch that Knox gets in 89. So that is similar. Let's see, the novelization of Man Without Fear and the graphic audio drama that you and I both listened to also kind of has Fisk working for the man who killed Jack Murdock, but doesn't directly have him be involved at all with Jack's death. So it's kind of interesting this attempt to merge the two in different forms of Daredevil stories.
Yeah, it's that by the way, guys, that graphic audio is like really good.
Yeah,
I would like to in the future see, because there's like there's one of the gang members whose name I'm blanking on right now. It's like super sadistic, and it's kind of like a precursor to Bullseye in terms of like the sadism and everything. Like I would like to see a version of that like adapted in the future, just because of like he's kind of like in Long Halloween, he's kind of like a indicator of like what kind of like sickos that Daredevil is going to be dealing with in the future, kind of thing. Yeah,
because I almost thought like, oh, are they putting Bullseye in this? And then I remembered the guy from the comic. I'm like, oh, this is just the writer fleshing out who was in the Miller comic. But yeah, it was a really cool character, and it's a great audio drama. So check that out.
Definitely, yeah.
This scene with the death of Jack is fantastic. This is one of those that I was telling one of our supporters, Logan Wood, like people put Daredevil as like one of the worst superhero movies, but you get to the scene and I'm just like, how can you hate this? Like the score again, Graeme Revell. Like you've got this kid's performance too. Uh, I can't see you, Dad, as the line. Like it's so wonderful, and wonderfully tragic and somber and gothic too, with the combination and like the blood as he like grasps, the rose. And comic book wise, look at this composition. It's just right off the cover of the first issue of Man Without Fear.
Definitely. It's like I said, like it's one of those things, and like I know a lot of people will say this about Marvel movies, and they might be
Mhm.
kind of right. With them churning out so many, there's like less like attention to detail, or kind of just like stuff like this, where
Mhm.
like they can kind of like craft a scene like this and have like these moments like at each one of these movies kind of has its unique identity, and I feel like that's kind of been lost
Mhm.
recently with like a lot of Marvel movies, definitely. And this
For
one
sure.
definitely has its own vibe. And yeah, like it's like what we're always talking about, right? With like Batman Forever, where people see like one or two moments and they make this snap judgment about the whole movie. And it's like, no, like if you actually watch these movies, they have these brilliant moments in them. You just have to watch them to see that. But like a lot of people don't even, I was telling you about this earlier, a lot of people
Mhm.
decide how they feel about a movie before they even watch it most of the time these
Yeah.
days. So yeah.
Yeah. Now, if you look at this era, you've got Blade in 99, X-Men
Mhm.
2000, Spider-Man 2020, 2002, Daredevil 2003, Hulk 2003. Like these all feel very different from each other. They all kind of have their own identity. You've got Raimi, you've got Ang Lee, uh, you've got even Johnson, right? You've got all people who kind of have their own irons in the fire and their own distinct style. And we've lost that in like,
Mhm.
sure, in the cinematic universe is kind of cool that it has a similar feel, but then at a certain point, especially when you're so many years in, it's gotten to the point where it all sort of blends together. The director is kind of lost. I remember one of the episodes we pulled up like who's directing some of the or who directed some of the recent stuff or who's directing some of the upcoming stuff, and we hadn't heard of, nothing against those directors, but it was like, this is like, what's the style? Like, what's the signature? We have that in these early 2000s Marvel movies for sure.
It's TV directing. It's turned into TV directing where they
Hmm.
basically it's like Kevin Smith talked about this with the Flash CW thing where it's like
Hmm.
basically the crew and everyone that's already there has everything set up. Like you're
Hmm.
there and you do like direct stuff, but like for the most part it's an assembly line at this point where they have their own thing. They're there longer than you, so they have this whole thing lined up and you just
Hmm.
kind of push it along. And there's not like much room for creativity or for you to like do stuff like this basically, or like moments like that. Like it's less of a creative thing and more of a like it's, I get it, like you can't really have as much of an original voice when you're trying to like tie everything together and like like have all these overlapping things somehow like fused together into like one thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's downsides to having a cinematic universe,
Hmm.
but we'll see what happens with the DCU. In the meantime, we now get Ben Affleck finally, and he ends up waking up from this not echo chamber, this sort of the sensory deprivation chamber is the best way to
Yeah.
call it. And this is similar to one that we see here in Daredevil 188, except he doesn't usually sleep there in the comics. He's kind of just there because of the situation. But I really love this whole him getting up type of thing. And funny enough, this is the second time we've been introduced to Matt Murdock just kind of waking up and starting his day, because that was also Rex Smith in Trial of the Incredible Hulk. Except Rex Smith wasn't rocking out the seether as he was doing it in 1989. So, um, quick tangent then on that, but
Hmm.
I think it was because of this scene or something like that, because it kind of goes that plus Affleck's expression kind of goes into his like feelings about himself without him saying a word.
Hmm.
The song is called "Hang On" by Seether, and that introduced me to this band that became one of my favorites in high school. And sometimes to this day, I still start my day playing this song as I get up because of Daredevil 2003. I just looked a lot less depressed doing it compared to
Yeah.
Ben Affleck in this. But just a shout out to Seether on that. They would eventually do the Punisher 2004 and Punisher Warzone. But for Punisher 2004, that's when they had that big hit with Amy Lee from Evanescence, Broken, where they collaborated together.
I love
So,
that song, by the way.
that was awesome too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's one of my faves.
It's and they had two songs as well on Punisher. So this is a big highlight for their careers. I'm sure was being part of Daredevil and the Punisher soundtracks.
So like this, do you know what comic this one's from right here?
This is Daredevil 188.
Okay.
I don't know the name of the story. This is just the kind of the issue. It's part of the Frank Miller omnibus. So I know that
Gotcha.
you're reading it. You'll get to this
Mhm.
issue pretty soon. Then we get to the courtroom scene, and that's where we have a line that I just really love from Affleck. I know some people might think it's cheesy, but when Quesada is lying on the stand, and it's towards the end of the scene when Affleck knows this guy's gonna get away with it. He's like, I hope justice is found here today before justice finds you.
Oh, I like that line too.
So good.
People don't like that line?
I think people just in general find this movie. I don't think they cite this one at all. But I think people just like, oh, it's cheesy. I'm just like, this is one where that ain't cheesy. That's badass to me.
I mean, the Frank Miller comics, like he's definitely inspired by like noir and stuff, and that's a very like noir line. Like it fits the tone of what you're making, basically. Like I don't know, like noir could be cheesy, but like it's definitely one of those things where they have these melodramatic lines. Like comics are melodrama. Like I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
Then we kind of get the first major scene with Jon Favreau's Foggy Nelson. This is post Batman Forever. He actually has lines in this one, but before he was MCU Happy Hogan, and he's one of the highlights of this movie. Like he's a great comedic relief. He's, I think we talked about last time how we like this version of Foggy better than the Netflix one, and because he's hilarious and he has some of the best lines. And they were supposed to have a reference to him being Foggy in No Way Home, actually, because he has the scenes with Charlie Cox. And I was like, oh, they should have done that. Where apparently they were going to have him say something where like Charlie Cox has Matt Murdock, tries to remind him about something, and Favreau says, it's a little foggy to me. But I guess they figured nobody was going to get it, but we would have.
Yeah, we would have. They should have done it. Cowards.
Yeah, I know. Then we get this awesome suit up sequence again with Graeme Revell's score. The zoom in with the on the glasses, and then he's doing the Billy Club stuff as if they're nunchucks. It's awesome.
Yeah, that came back a little bit more like with the Netflix thing, but like just going back briefly for a second, and I told you this too. Happy and him in this, like I didn't appreciate when I was younger how good their like chemistry was and how good their comedic chemistry was back and forth, him and Affleck. And I would have watched just a whole nother movie with that, just the two of them in it. Like they definitely have like great like scenes and everything. And like I don't hate Foggy in the Netflix one as much as everyone else does, but the one pro I will say about this one is he's not constantly trying to get Matt to stop being the superhero that we literally tune in to see. So that's a positive in his direction, I will say.
Yeah, for sure. He's like a welcome presence. He's a more welcome presence on screen. He doesn't try to talk him out of, like you said, being somebody who we're trying to watch this for him to suit up as Daredevil. Otherwise,
he's not the Hulk. Like we want him to keep doing this. Like he's not the Hulk where we want him to get cured. This one, it's like, no, we want to see him keep doing good. Like, come on.
Yeah. So we get to this bar scene, and one trivia that I want to point out is that like the big dude who points out Daredevil, who's like, hey, look over there. Like that is Tanoy Reed, who is The Rock's cousin. That's Dwayne Johnson's cousin, and has been the stunt double. And at one point he was Bane and Batman for Bat in the Sun.
Nice.
Which is funny because we also have another Bat in the Sun Batman later on in this movie, which we'll talk about. But that was kind of cool to be in there. And we've got this fight set to Nickelback, Learn the Hard Way, which I thought was still really cool too, not just because of the fight sequences, but the way they played with sound to indicate how he's able to do this. It might throw some people off in terms of it being that choppy and edited out, but it's to give the feel of it for sure.
This is a movie after my own heart, Ben, with some of the music in it. It's definitely It's
Yeah.
definitely like one of those, like, you're just speaking my language right now.
Mhm. Yeah. For sure. And then one thing to note too, when he confronts Casada at the train, where he wraps the billy club along around his neck, he's like, "Hi, how you doing?" For some reason, as a kid, when I first saw that bit, I was reminded of Michael Keaton. I don't know why, but I was just like, there was that
Hmm.
moment that I was like, you know what? Maybe they should have Ben Affleck as Batman in 2003. So
Yeah.
we were onto something at that point. But
It was funny how you said
yeah,
it just now. It kinda, because I thought you were gonna go another way with this way you said "hi." It kinda reminded me of in Batman Returns, he goes, "Hi," like that, like Penguin and everything, like that kinda vibe to it. But yeah, I like that.
mhm,
This one goes through a more believable character arc than in BVS, basically, is what I'll
yeah,
say. Like, I like this more. No one has to say, like, his mother's name in order to get him to stop being a killer, basically. So, yeah, that's one positive I will say about this. Another
yeah.
positive in its favor.
Yes, which then leads us into the one of the most controversial moments in the movie, which is him allowing Jose Quesada to get run over by the train.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads into how do you feel about Daredevil as a no kill rule type of thing? Again, this is Daredevil and Batman. They both kind of have similarities. I think we've talked about this offline too. Batman has a hard set no kill rule that he's famous for, that whenever he ends up killing in the movies, it becomes controversial, especially when he's Ben Affleck. And then whenever Daredevil kills somebody, it becomes controversial, especially when he's Ben Affleck. So just Ben Affleck just
Yeah.
can't catch a break when it comes to his homicidal tendencies. But uh, how do you feel about Daredevil allowing Casada to die in this moment?
Well, here's the thing. I I don't ever usually like it when heroes kill in
Mhm,
general. I feel like in a lot of cases it's like with, and then like, because I had this talk with my wife Amanda, because we have a Batman show too.
mhm,
And she's like, well, why doesn't he just do this? Like, why doesn't he just kill? I'm like, look, if you want to just look at it from a legal aspect, it's like Commissioner Gordon and him get along and have like a legal thing, but it's like if he kills, he immediately has to like bring him in. Like that's
yeah.
when he crosses a line. So if you're looking from a legal standpoint, with Daredevil, I don't really know because like I'm not as familiar with this character. Is he been known to kill before in the comics? Is that as much of a thing?
So the main instance where it's like very apparent is there's a sequence in the Man Without Fear comic. It's not in the
Hmm.
graphic audio that we listen to, but probably because of the fact that this happens. But he tackles two guys. They go underwater. One guy drowns, and which is that's kind of borderline because he didn't necessarily deliberately drown him, but the other one's got a knife. And then the dialogue is from Matt. Well, not dialogue, but his inner
Hmm.
monologue inside is like, he's got a knife, no choice, and he makes the guy stab himself,
Yeah.
and then he leaves him for dead
Huh.
in the ocean. And I'm like, there probably could have been another way to do that, man.
Well,
Like,
the girl, like in the graphic audio, like the girl falls out and everything, and he's kind of traumatized. But I forgot about that. But in the graphic audio, where he's just
yeah,
like he doesn't want to kill or anything
yeah,
after that, so maybe he
that one's
does have like a harder rule.
yeah, that one's more of an accident. But that moment for sure, in Man Without Fear, I was like, dude, like Miller has him do it. This isn't even a Dark Knight Returns thing where I'm like, oh, people might misinterpret it and then try to put it into the movie. But this
Yeah.
is I'm like, it's for sure in this moment. But I was thinking about this and I was talking to Logan as well, where maybe there are like kind of two major points that I would think even make it more important for Matt not to kill. One being the legal side, like you talked about, he's a lawyer.
Hmm.
Uh, but the other aspect is the religious part, the Catholicism, the
Yeah.
um, the idea or the beliefs in God and a higher power and like all these other aspects that do feel like, you know what, maybe in some ways it's even more important for Matt Murdock than it is for Bruce Wayne, for
Hmm.
him to hold that line, which I hadn't really thought of before until Logan brought up the Catholicism aspect of it. So it's interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way before, especially because this movie was my introduction. So I was kind of just used to seeing Daredevil let a a terrible person get run over by a train. But
Yeah.
yeah, I can kind of see how it might not click when you really think deeply about the character.
That's also another thing. I was listening to the featurette with Miller,
Hmm.
and Miller tries to claim that he made Daredevil a Catholic. He did not. That was already a thing in the comics before that. He probably just maybe made it more of it about his character, basically. But he was Catholic before that. Like that was a thing that was already pre-established,
Nice.
basically.
Yeah, we'll have to take a look in terms of where that started, or you guys can comment below on that, because I've been reading the like very first Stan Lee stuff, and that's definitely not like a part that's in there. But it comes up at some point, I'm sure, before Miller. Before we go into the rest of the movie, we're going to take a quick break. So this is not a word from our sponsor. This is something that our founder, Andrew, wanted to do for the show, and I want to carry over, which is that instead of an ad read, this is a charity read. And I think Alex and I agree with Andrew's principle that if you're reading or watching, or in this case, listening about superheroes, you've got to try to at least be a hero yourself. So
Definitely.
many of you have heard about the fires that went through LA this January, and luckily Andrew and I were unscathed by it, but other people weren't so lucky. And for a while, it seems like this has been old news. This is April now, and that happened in January. There's not really a lot of reports about it, but I can tell you, for many people, they still don't have their homes back. They're still going through reconstruction. They still haven't even visited the site of where everything has been, just because of how bad it's all been burnt down and the air quality. And so we have a lot of people who are still looking for ways to get back on their feet. And one such couple are Robert and Nazare over in Altadena. They are two therapists who had plans for retiring and selling their house. And unfortunately, the fire took that opportunity away and they lost their home. They're not able to do that. Their plans for retirement were completely shattered due to this disaster. These two are, from what I've known about them, real life heroes. They have soldiered on. They are still continuing their practice as therapists to help patients, despite the fact that they've been displaced. They've been left with nothing. I'm sure they've got some form of housing since it's been a few months, but they certainly don't have a home, and not the home that they've built up for many years. And yet they are spending their time helping other people with their mental health throughout all
They're
this.
heroes too.
Yeah, for sure. So their patients did set up a GoFundMe page, which you can find here. I'm going to read it off for the listeners. It's gofundme.com/f/assist-beloved-couple-after-fire-loss. So essentially, GoFundMe, assist beloved couple after fire loss. The link will be in the description as well. Donate what you can. They are only at 65% of their goal as of this recording. Any little bit can help. So once again, if you're listening about heroes, please be one yourself. All right. Thanks, guys. And let's go on to the next part. One of the best sequences in the movie is Matt coming home from the death of Quesada. And you see his bruised body. You have the recreation, it feels, of that Alex Ross Batman from War on Crime with the scars and bruises on his back. Like, that was excellent. Again, as a kid.
BVS has a similar thing too. Hey, another connection. How about that? Yeah, hey. Get more excuses for Affleck to take his shirt off. As a bisexual man, I appreciate it. So, hey.
we've got him pulling a tooth out, which was so hardcore. And again, the sequence where he wakes up and the sequence where he comes back home, technically they have nothing to do with the rest of the story. You could cut these out and the rest of the story is fine. But it just adds so much to the character. These are actual character moments that like stick with you, that are memorable, that we just don't get with a lot of modern Marvel, where like I can't remember something like this being in a movie, and it's because it's visceral. He's feeling the ink on the prescription bottles for his painkillers. He's in the director's cut. He puts Epsom salt in the in the tank before he goes in.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, it's so hardcore. And one other thing to note too is that we hear the debut of his current girlfriend in Daredevil Born Again. This is the original version of Heather in live action, except we don't really see her, but it's her voice on the voicemail. Heather Glenn is leaving a voicemail breaking up with Matt, and you might have noticed that she's got a little bit of an Irish accent in this, and that's because she's voiced by Claudine Farrell, sister to Colin Farrell. He got her a part in this movie as the voice of the original Heather Glenn. So I thought that was always kind of fun, and whenever I listen to it, she kind of starts out very sounding American, and then she gets more and more Irish as she gets to the rest of the dialogue. But we can just say this version of Heather was Irish.
They
It's
probably recorded
continuity.
in like one take, basically.
Yeah. And then we get to the beginning of the most major difference between the theatrical and the director's cut, which is the death of Lisa Tazio. So this
Yeah.
is hardcore in the director's cut, where it's almost as if they make you try to think that there's like a dying woman in his apartment, um, who's trying to
The
reach out for help.
visuals.
Yeah, just the visuals, just to show that he can't escape hearing people in need of help who he's not able to help out. Because even if he did like rush out to put on the suit, it would have been too late. You know,
Hmm.
she's already been wounded. So was that's the point where if you've seen the theatrical cut and you're watching the director's cut for the first time, you might not catch on the little more subtle changes that we talked about earlier, but you're definitely going to catch this one because this leads into this major subplot that helps add to the director's cut, that adds to the plot.
Hmm. It's yeah, that whole scene, like just how they chose to portray it, because it could have just been one of those things where you heard it, but just physically seeing her like crawling
Mhm,
on the floor next to his basically his bed
mhm,
was like a crazy visual to see. And like again, feeding into what I said earlier, with this is a very visually like stunning movie, especially for the time. Like some of the stuff they were able to do in here, damn it, everybody go watch this movie. This movie is really great. Like the director's cut's awesome. Like
yeah.
go watch this.
Uh, Another addition in the director's cut is this part. We do get the flashback of Sister Maggie visiting him in the
Wow.
hospital when he was a kid, when he was blinded, and him feeling the rosary around her. And this is his mom. For those who aren't familiar with the comics, spoiler alert for something that's been around for decades. But his mom is Sister Maggie, and she came to visit him after finding out he was blinded, and he's going to meet her later. And there's a few things to note here. One is just it's a shot for shot almost recreation of the comic as we see here, and it's done in an excellent way to the point where Frank Miller had to like Mark Steven Johnson had to tell Frank Miller that the studio is asking to cut it, and that broke Frank Miller's heart that was taken out, and understandably because of just how well it's recreated here. And the last thing to note on this is the fact that one of the major stories in comics is Born Again, which establishes Sister Maggie's character, and that was adapted into season 3 of the Daredevil Netflix show. But there was talk at the time from a lot of sources, including Affleck, saying that he was interested in Born Again being Daredevil 2. They were going to adapt this part in Daredevil 2. So this is almost their way of leaving the door open for, hey, like that one weird little moment where it seemed like a nun visited him as a kid. What was that about? You'll find out in the next movie.
Yeah. I kind of wish there was another one. Like,
Yeah.
I guess we can theorize on this maybe in another episode, but like, or maybe if you have some other ideas or other like basically plans that they might have had. But like, what would have a sequel been to this? Like, obviously we did get a sequel, but like
Mhm.
one like that's a direct sequel to this. I wonder what that would have been. Hmm.
Yeah, the information I have is that it was, like, Johnson wanted to do more with Karen Page, actually.
Yeah,
So that
Karen's in this, by the way, guys.
Karen's in this, yeah, for, like, 1 scene in the theatrical cut and, like, 2 in the director's cut. She's still not that big of a part in it, but she's played by Ellen Pompeo, who, is famous now, for years because she's been the lead in Grey's Anatomy, one of the longest running TV shows. So
That's where I
She's
recognized her
still
from.
yeah, she still made bank in general, not necessarily from this movie, but still had a whole career, and it would be interesting to think about it because Born Again is something that people bring up, as well as Affleck's been on record from what I read about wanting to do Guardian Devil. Both of those are very heavy in Karen Page, so you really need to establish Karen Page, I feel, before you even go into that territory. Now, with Born
Mhm.
Again, you can kind of get a little bit of leeway considering the fact that in the comic, it's Karen who gives up Matt's identity, whereas in the movie universe, that's already taken care of. Wilson Fisk has already found out, so you don't need
Yeah.
Karen betraying him. So I can kind of see that working in some way, and him having to rely on Karen more in the sequel, and then that gets a little bit more developed.
I have
But
hot
as we
takes
different,
on Born Again. I like it overall, but just Frank Miller and Alan Moore not really great at doing stuff with women. Basically, is all I'm going to say for
Mhm.
right now. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Fairly obvious considering the stories that they're known for. what they did
Yeah.
to Barbara Gordon and Kieran Page.
He gets killed in this movie, so Miller. So
Uh, Along the lines of comic book creators getting brought up, we have mentions of a Mr. Lee client who paid in Fluke. Fluke's a fish, Matt. Did you know that? Because I sure as hell didn't. So
no.
like Mr. Lee's a reference to Stanley, of course, and that's one of the more fun ones. You almost kind of, if they didn't put him as the old man who gets saved by Matt, it would have been funny to have him at the law offices of Nelson and Murdoch dropping off some fish.
His cameos have gotten a little bit more later on, get a little bit more where he's in the spotlight. These early ones, he is very much like if you notice him, you notice him. And by the third Spider-Man movie, he's got like a speaking role and everything. Like it's funny just how much more prominent he becomes as those movies go on, basically.
Yeah. I guess one man can make a difference. Enough said.
Yeah, I was like, oh, all right, guys, come on.
It's in the scene that we are introduced to Elektra for the first time. Jennifer Garner looking absolutely beautiful and gorgeous in this movie. But one thing to note that I forgot about was that they deliberately gave her different colored eyes. They gave her green eyes in this. At some point, I wonder if it was CG because I think it seemed like they were painted. I think that they were contact lenses. They did not carry that over into Deadpool and Wolverine. I don't remember that. But I'm kind of just like, was this really necessary? The comic book Elektra doesn't have green eyes. Greek people aren't known for having green eyes. I don't really know why this is a change. It'd be one thing if this was like Catwoman and they're like, oh, this would be kind of cool because it gives her more cat-like eyes. But
did they do color correction on it? Maybe it kind of because I noticed that in that scene too. Like the saturation was up or something. Like it looks like they kind of like in her first scene. I'm like, why is this like really overly saturated? Like felt like a different movie for a second there.
Yeah,
weird choice.
Definitely, has got rom-com feels when she walks in. But it's a weird moment. It's a weird choice too with the green eyes because it's not even necessary. Again, like it's not really something that the character is associated with. So it's a weird addition for sure. I have to find out why they did that. And we now are led into the playground sequence, which I think we've agreed is the worst part of it, but not necessarily for what I remember. At first, I was like, okay, it's going to be cheesy as hell, but I also realized there's another element too where it just feels wildly out of character for Matt Murdock to like. It's one thing for him to like have this playful banter with her. It's another thing where it's like, I'm going to follow you because I didn't get your name, and when you don't give it to me, I'm going to grab your arm so that you don't go away. I'm like, what?
Yeah, and then the other thing too is like, I think I made a note about this. Is like, outside like people that don't know what's happening, it just looks like she's trying to beat up a blind guy, like in front of all these kids and stuff. Like she doesn't look good here, and then like it's just a bizarre scene. Like these full grown adults like doing this like play fighting on this playground. Like it's a weird scene. It should have been lost in a draft, or maybe just find a different way to basically do that scene. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I think they wanted to establish that, like, look, she can fight so that it doesn't seem like out of nowhere when we get to her doing it later. But there's other ways to do it, right? There could have easily been other ways to do it, and
maybe she gets mugged or something, and then like he maybe goes like, "Oh, I gotta go help her," and then like she just takes the guys out. And he's like, "Oh, never mind," kind of thing.
Yeah,
like, you could have had a scene like that or something.
Yeah, and that could have been part of the meet cute, right? Where like she walks off, he's like, and then he can like overhear that someone's about to mug her, and he's like, hold on, and then he goes after her, and that kind of solves a lot of the characterization issues we have here of him just being like, I'm just gonna follow this woman.
I'm just gonna harass this woman. Great message, guys.
Well, also too, they didn't have to do this because in the comics, there's already a built-in backstory. They were college lovers.
Yeah, so, olive oil. Yeah.
Yeah, for those who don't know, there's the that was his nickname for her in the original appearance for Elektra, and I was like, why couldn't we have just made her like they already know each other? Like that's such an easy, from a writer's perspective, I always find that to be an easier cheat because it's like, oh, like it seems more fun than trying to develop something completely from scratch, which is what they try to do here. And in this case, it was more faithful to the source material. So that does lead to a note that we talked about where Jennifer Garner's Elektra feels different in characterization, and she is closer to actually the first appearance of Elektra when she was in college,
Yeah.
compared to what we would end up seeing in Man Without Fear. So the first time that they introduced Elektra, there were flashbacks to how Matt and Elektra met, and she was kind of portrayed as of this very innocent girl who was then shattered by her father's death, and then now she's now come back to present day as this badass assassin. And
Mhm.
later on, Miller retcons that further to be like, no, she was always somewhat psychotic.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I feel like it's the Sin City. Like, so I don't remember when he started writing Sin City, but
Mhm.
maybe it's kind of that creeping in where it's like, oh, like she's dangerous and that's like hot or something to him. Or it's
Mhm.
like, I don't really know why Miller, like that was the move, but I'm like, no, the whole point of this character, at least how I originally read her, is it's the one that got away
Mhm.
aspect to it. It's that whole kind of vibe. It's like Superman with like Lori Lamaris and everything, where it's like this character that he knew in his early college years that later on got away. Basically, it's like that what if
Mhm.
basically, and it's lost when you make her like, oh, she's dangerous and stuff. I'm like, Miller, come on, man. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I can see why they wanted to go in the direction that they did. They might not have thought that the audience could connect with somebody who is sort of seen as like, oh, she's dangerous and she hears voices and all this type of stuff that comes up in The Man Without Fear.
Jennifer Garner, I don't know if she could have pulled that off
That
either.
too.
So, like, no
Yeah.
offense to her acting capabilities, it would have felt out of place, though, maybe.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't have cast her for that version. I think they specifically cast her because of the whole like innocent girl who becomes a badass, because that's kind of what she was known for in Alias. Alias was sort of a similar thing where she was kind of just had this ordinary life, or not really ordinary life, but that she um was, shattered by tragedy and is out for revenge, like that type of thing. So
Mhm,
that's it fit in terms of this version.
definitely.
And then lastly, not lastly, but like the next part we see is the introduction to Kingpin, the introduction to Wilson Fisk here, and they have it's very truncated in the theatrical cut. In the theatrical cut, we just kind of have this moment where we meet him, and then we cut to him meeting Elektra's dad. In the director's cut, we have this whole sequence of him killing his own bodyguards, who he suspects of talking, which is a very Kingpin type moment.
Yeah,
Great showcase for Michael Clark Duncan,
he's
and
great.
yeah, such good casting for Kingpin.
Mhm.
Even though, yeah, Vincent D'Onofrio was around at that time, but it's just different with this take. And even though D'Onofrio is great, I think there's something about Michael Clark Duncan's physical presence that we just don't have in the Netflix version or the Disney Plus version. And there's also a different vibe to it. Like D'Onofrio's version is always kind of come off as like a child in a very dangerous man's body, whereas Michael Clark Duncan is just this dangerous, extremely charismatic, smooth operator until you piss him off. Like that's
From
kind
the
of how,
Bronx, too,
yeah.
which was, like, an interesting
Mhm.
addition. I don't that's not in the comics, is it?
I don't remember if it's that specific neighborhood, like if it's or borough, I should say.
Yeah.
So I don't know for sure.
He's got an
Um,
edge to him, though, definitely.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And another difference as well is how we check back with Matt and Elektra. So in the theatrical version, we check back with Matt and Elektra, where they're walking together, and Matt learns how Elektra could fight and shares with her how he's able to see without seeing. To him, darkness is as clear as daylight. No,
Yeah.
the,
Nice.
the um, director's cut, though, we don't have any of that. It's more the playground fight ends and the bodyguards show up, and Matt reacts to the fact that she has a bodyguard. She leaves. She says that she would find him, which then they call back into later. And then he checks his watch and he realizes that he's late for court. So, um, still, it's an improvement, I think, with the director's cut. But it was a kind of nice scene with them walking in the theatrical version.
Yeah. Well, that's
And
definitely in
then
the comics too, with the whole like Foggy constantly having to stall for Matt all the time and like him being late. That's definitely a
yeah,
recurring bit in the comics.
yeah, yeah. So Kingpin finds out that Elektra's dad wants to get out of this, and he decides to bring in Bullseye, and that's when we get Colin Farrell before he was Penguin. And so you have a note here. You have a couple things on here. Do you want to have me show the concept art that you found?
Sure. Yeah, we can go into that. Yeah.
Look at this.
Yeah, it's definitely like it's speaking of like edginess, it's like that early 2000s kind of like edgy feel. I kind of agree with you. I like what we finally ended up with, just the single like dot in his head and everything. If
Mhm.
we're not going to get a suit, like this is close enough. But yeah, it's kind of like almost he's got like the eye right there is kind of the, you kind of lose the bullseye aspect of this
Well,
just
it's
because of how
Bull's eye. Is
yeah.
all around his eye. His eyes
Yeah,
at the center in this.
yeah, you kind of lose it though. Like I don't know, like the rest of the design is there, but it's we got what we got, and I think that's better than this. What do you think of it?
I think the guy who did this did an excellent job of doing a beautiful piece of work for a pun. For
Yeah,
a pun
basically,
of the bullseye. I don't think it works compared to the one in the movie. I like what they did. I prefer what they did in the movie as well because it carries over the comic book aesthetic of the bullseye on his forehead, but in their own way. I think we all would have still preferred something that was closer to the comic book version, but for what they did, if you're going to do like, no, it has to be a bald guy with a leather coat. I was like, all right, well then just do the bullseye like they did, where it's literally just the bullseye symbol on the top of his head.
definitely.
So yeah, Colin Farrell is uh, really hamming it up again in this movie, and you can tell he had a lot of fun. He had a lot of fun, and it's fun watching him in this one, and it's incredible to think about his career trajectory and going from this comic book villain to another one, and how he's gone from this where he's very much over the top to something where he'll be the most over to the top thing in the grounded universe, yet also something that is much deeper in characterization and a lot more to play with in the Penguin, of course. So it's kind of fun to compare.
Definitely.
All right, let's go into one of the major differences as well with the theatrical and the director's cut is the Dante Jackson subplot. We have this entire subplot. Matt has a client whom he realizes must be innocent because he's got his whole lie detector thing, and it is surrounding the death of Lisa Tazio, whose death we've overheard in the movie. And so we lead into this investigation, which did make me wonder, shouldn't Daredevil be the world's greatest detective? Because he's got
Yeah,
all the senses and he constantly has to figure out what's going around him 24/7. But anyway, we got kind of a detective movement. We have Ben Affleck doing more detective work in this than he did as Batman in this one
yeah,
sequence where he goes to Lisa's place. And that was really cool, but it does show like here's his motivation. This is him sticking up for the little guy who is this there's this man who is from the streets who has been falsely accused of this crime, and no one else will believe that he's innocent, but he will
yeah,
stick up for them, and he will find justice as well for Lisa Tazio, who's the sex worker who, maybe no one else cares about, but he cares about. Like it's something that adds just so much more to Matt in this version that we lose when you don't have him even on a case in the theatrical cut.
yeah. Turk
So,
also,
oh, yeah,
just I don't
yeah.
know where we bring this up, but like Turk seems to be a recurring character in this and a common
Mhm,
element. So Turk is his friend who owes him money in this. Dante, like he
mhm.
mentions him at one point. I was like, son of a bitch! Like second time surprisingly, like you wouldn't think that this would be such a because obviously in the comics
Mhm.
he's a reoccurring character that Daredevil always roughs up for information. But like it's interesting that they always manage to kind of include him. He only makes like a mention in this, but like it's still I'm still reeling from last time, dude, where we actually got like a full blown character in that movie. That was
Mhm.
still so cool to see.
Yeah. It's an underrated part, there's always it seems like for each version, we've got a Matt Murdock, we've got a Kingpin, and we've got some version of Turk exists. We might
Yeah,
not always have a Karen Page or a Foggy Nelson, as we saw in the '89 one, but we've got we've got a Turk in each version.
definitely.
Uh, One of the things that threw me even as a kid was this next difference between the theatrical and the director's cut, which is that Matt has this kind of date with Elektra where he brings her up to the rooftop and rain comes down and he gets to see her for the first time and they have this beautiful romantic moment. And then in the theatrical version, he hears all these cries for help, but Elektra tells him, "Stay with me," and he decides, "Okay," and he sleeps with her, despite the fact that we have all these people who are in need of help, and we have even an instrumental version of the callings for you in this, which was a complete surprise to me when I first saw this. But it just, even as a kid, I was just like, "Wait, what?" Like this kind of feels weird to me that he's just gonna let all these people die because he wants to get laid. So this is
Yeah,
this
that's
is sorely corrected. This is definitely, and I say corrected, but it seems corrected because it's in hindsight, right? But the original
mhm.
vision was that he did not stay with her. The original vision
Yeah,
was that he has to leave her up on the rooftop and make up for it later, and it pisses him off that he had wanted this one night with her and he can't even have that, which also kind of leads into why he's so furious at that guy who he beats the shit out of in front of his kid. Like that's again just emotional motivation that makes way more sense in the director's cut when he's beating down the guy versus the theatrical version where it's kind of a random night that he's out, um, and beats on the guy,
mhm.
and it just makes way more sense, and it kind of leads into the whole "I'm not the bad guy" arc that we have in this movie, and it also colors the morning after scene a lot differently, because in the theatrical cut it just seems like, oh, he's still reeling from what the kid told him in the theatrical version when he comes into the Nelson and Murdoch offices. But in the director's cut it comes off more like he is not only absorbing that, but he is like not really ashamed. I guess the right word is more of like he's frustrated. He's disappointed by the fact that this lifestyle prevents him from being able to be with Elektra.
Yeah,
Um, and again, it all makes way more sense in the director's cut.
yeah, definitely.
We also have different invitations to the ball in the theatrical cut. It's sort of reordered where he refuses the ball beforehand, but then Elektra visits him. Then they sleep together, and Matt lets a bunch of people die, and then he gets the invitation in bed the next day. Whereas in the director's cut, he's invited for the first time after he leaves her at the rooftop, and the invitation is more of like, "Hey, I'm still going to give you a chance, even though you left me."
Mhm.
So um, I thought that was more solid, of course, in the director's cut. And in both versions, too, of Karen Page, I should shout out to the writing. Like, Karen is in one scene in both versions, but the way it's written, you know exactly what's going on with the love triangle of Matt, Karen, and Foggy.
Yeah,
And
she's so into him.
yeah, and it's just done in a few lines, but just the again, like this does not get enough credit as a movie because it's in the theatrical cut. It's not all in the director's cut,
Mhm.
but there's just a few lines about her saying +1, and then Foggy takes it's like, aha, +1. I guess I'm going, and him, asking for coffee. All that type of stuff is so well done and so well portrayed by the actors, and I wish there was more stuff like that people could gravitate towards.
Mhm.
Uh, we get the party sequence, and we have yet again a foreshadowing of BVS where Ben Affleck is in his civilian guise and he's talking to a reporter at a party criticizing the story he's working on. So, and while his alter ego is brought up. So that's a sequence there. And
What'd
we
you
also
think of
have,
this, Uric, by the way, really
oh, yeah,
quick?
Ben Urich. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Ben Urich character is in here investigating Daredevil. And in the director's cut, we get a lot more scenes too that continue the subplot of Dante Jackson with Foggy wanting to represent Wilson Fisk because he doesn't know he's the Kingpin and having to go through Wesley. And during the sequence, we see a familiar face. If you're a Batman fan, we see Kevin Porter, a very young Kevin Porter, years before he would be the Bat in the Sun Batman. And lo and behold, he's sharing the screen with future Batman Ben Affleck, who looks very shocked here. But
His
that is
face.
awesome. Yeah.
He's like, "Holy shit, it's Batman."
Yeah. Right. So Kevin Porter plays this bodyguard. We see him after the party when Elektra's coming back into the car. We also see him at the funeral. So he did survive Bullseye's attack, but he lets her into the car at the funeral. So he's in two scenes.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
I was asking earlier, I think it cut off a little bit, but,
oh,
I was asking what'd you think of this Uric in the
oh,
movie?
sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, I liked him. I've liked Joe Pantoliano in a lot of stuff. I don't see him that much later on. It's a little different. He's a little bit more of a hip 2000s version of Ben Urich.
The hat.
Yeah, the hat. But I thought I did a good job. I think there's also an element to the reason why they might have had him cast is because of the fact that one of his most famous roles is Cypher in The Matrix, where he was a bad guy, and so you kind of play around with, is Ben Urich going to be helping Matt? Is he against Matt? Is he going to expose him? They play around with a lot of your hope and fear when it comes to Ben Urich. You're not you kind of understand where he's coming from, but you also don't want him to find out more about Matt or expose him as Daredevil because he does find out the secret.
Is he in Memento?
Oh yeah, he's in Memento too as another bad guy.
That's what it is. Okay, yeah. I was looking. I was just I was hearing his voice. I'm like, where do I know this guy from? Yeah, cool. That's where I remember him from. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Nice. I like him too.
Yeah. No, he's a good Ben Urich. And he's still alive in this universe as opposed to Netflix, where they shockingly killed him off, which was a great twist for the fans.
That broke my heart, man.
Yeah. It made sense in the story, but man, that was shocking.
Yeah.
Bullseye kills Frank Miller to steal his motorcycle. So we get a Frank Miller cameo. And we got this whole sequence set to Drowning Pool with Rob Zombie on The Man Without Fear. Very much 2000s. Rob Zombie was on every soundtrack. He was on The Matrix. He was on this. He's on Punisher Warzone. He's on everything. But
oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's on Warzone. He does the Warzone theme that plays when the credits roll.
Nice.
And
I like his Halloween. I know that's not a popular take, but I don't mind his Halloween movie. I think that's pretty good.
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it's all right. It's pretty good.
So we have a showdown between Bullseye and Daredevil the first time that they meet. One note that I have that isn't fixed in the director's cut: how does Bullseye get his bully club?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even notice.
When Daredevil runs, he kicks him. Bullseye, for all his talents, he's nowhere near reaching distance to Daredevil's leg at that moment. He's just magic, I guess, as he says later on.
Yeah, he said it. There you go. We fixed it. It's it's fixed. He meant it literally.
Bullseye uses the Billy Club to kill Elektra's father, which is reminiscent to how he killed Karen in the Guardian Devil comic. Spoilers for the Kevin Smith comic. Did you not know that?
No, I haven't read that comic yet. That's crazy.
Well, sorry about that. That's why in Daredevil season 3 they play around with that when Bullseye shows up at the church and he throws the Billy Club, but he kills the priest instead of Karen. The priest sacrifices himself for Karen. They play around with your expectations if you know the canon in that moment. So that's what they did here. They carry on that death here in the 2003 movie.
That's a great shot. But both the comic and the other one, that comic, that's a great. It's obviously horrifying because you're killing off a beloved character, but it's great visual.
Yeah. We have Matt then the morning after the death of Elektra's dad. He goes to see Father Everett, except we have two different versions of this because in the theatrical version, he's already gone to confession. We've had a few sequences. I forgot to talk about the earlier one, but we've have two scenes of him going to the confession booth, and it's pretty clear that Father Everett knows that he's Daredevil in the theatrical version. Mm-hmm. In the director's cut, he doesn't know at all. He seems to maybe he meets Matt for the first time or something in the pews of the church in the director's cut, and is kind of inviting him to be a part of the congregation, and Matt isn't up for it. And again, it feels like this is a dynamic that will inspire having Father Lantom in the Netflix show.
Yeah.
The next R-rated difference between theatrical and director's cut is the line from Bullseye, because I know you have a note here about Bullseye's costume. Bullseye
I want a fucking costume.
Yeah. He says, I want a fucking costume in the director's cut, but then they changed it in the theatrical cut to I want a bloody costume. And I remember Farrell at the time told people in the interview, he said that when he did the line on set, he's like, I didn't say bloody. That was 80 yards.
He was made to be a character actor. I feel like he is so good at doing those, inhabiting those different roles, and he's got good comedic chops. Mm-hmm. Too. I've seen him in another movie called In Bruges before.
Yeah.
That's like a really good movie about like two hitmen, basically. Like that's
Mhm.
also like a really solid one with some comedic scenes in it too. But yeah, he soars whenever he does like these kind of character,
Yeah.
like these character actor things.
Yeah, which is why I think people brought up a good point when he was in terms of he was cast as Batman for Batman versus Superman, not the Snyder one, but the Wolfgang Peterson one. But it
Hmm.
almost kind of feels like, yeah, he probably would have done well, but it like you kind of you'd miss out on what he can offer with some of these villains, especially what we saw with Penguin. Right. So
Hmm.
it's I think it was a good call when it came to casting him as Bullseye and as Penguin.
Yeah.
Next difference in the theatrical cut, Ben Urich tracks down Matt after shortly after the funeral in a separate scene. I know that there's another scene of him tracking down Matt at the funeral in the director's cut, but in the theatrical cut, he tracks down Matt and tells him Kingpin doesn't kill you, he kills your whole family. In the director's cut, Urich doesn't tell him that. It's actually the cop Mackenzie who tells him that in a sequence where Matt goes to interrogate him and decides he's gonna scare him by driving his car, which is so simple, but so genius in some way because it's a blind man and it's the car that he bought with the money he was used to get paid off, right? Or he was
I loved this scene. This
yeah
was such a fun scene. Like I loved this part.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
so good. And it's such a cool twist where he's like, why does it seem like this guy was telling the truth on the stand, but Dante's telling the truth? Something's not right. And then it's because of the pacemaker, which is, again, right out of the Frank Miller comics that we see on the left here.
Do you know who
And
wrote this script? This is a really solid script.
Mark Steven Johnson.
It's great stuff,
Yeah.
man. Like
Yeah.
great stuff.
He wrote that and co-writer on an earlier draft, which I know we're going to be doing next, is
Mhm.
Brian Helgeland, he's not credited in the movie, but he did work on the script. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit of both. And let's see, in another form of foreshadowing, just like in the Daredevil Born Again series, Matt gets into zero trouble for roughing up a corrupt cop. So he's just lucky when it comes to that in all versions.
Mhm.
In the director's cut, Karen Page saves the day a little bit in pointing out a big clue to Foggy Nelson. So a little bit more of Karen Page. We needed a lot more of her.
Mhm.
We have the introduction to Kevin Smith as the coroner, Jack Kirby. That's way too
Yeah.
much.
That
It's
was
coroner.
I agree the naming was a lot, but like he was one of my most entertaining moments in this. And like if you really know Kevin Smith, like this is some
Mhm.
Kevin Smith like Clerks level acting
Yeah.
here where it's just like he was the most enjoyable part of this. Like he definitely infused what I'm sure was like just like a little like cameo role
Mhm.
or whatever that could have just gone to an extra and actually made it kind of one of the more memorable moments of this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. I had forgotten that he was in it until we were like talking about the lead up to this, and then he showed up, and it's kind of wild, man, because we think of him so much as the current Kevin Smith in terms of his look and much thinner and older and as a podcaster, but then I'm like, oh yeah, he's an actor too.
Yeah.
Like he had a cameo in this.
Yeah, I
Let's
love
see.
his movies.
Ben Urich discovers Matt's identity, which is something that happens in the comics as well, though not nearly as cool as the Billy Club thing.
Mhm.
And then as he ends up in the theatrical version, he ends up talking to Matt, but in the director's cut, Foggy calls him. But both of them segue into our favorite song on the soundtrack, Bring Me to Life by Evanescence.
Hell yeah.
So the discovery of this was major for us, I think, because I don't know, it stands out so much on this album. I think it's because part of it is it's Amy Lee's vocals when you have so first off, it's a woman singing, but it's
Mhm.
also a mix of that with like rock plus like strings, theatrics, like the piano in the beginning, it all has like it just has a different vibe to it.
Yeah, it's definitely like it almost feels like a music video in terms of the staging and everything. It's like it's a
Mhm,
moment in the movie. Like it's one of those that's kind of designed to stand out. And like you said, it was one of those where I think that was one of the first big alternative songs I got into. I think I remember watching it and being like rewinding it to just that part and like watching that over and over again. Like, nah, I like this music and just like really getting into it. But
mhm,
yeah, definitely pivotal moment for our childhoods, definitely.
yeah.
But yeah.
And a great theme for Elektra. We've got that and My Immortal, which plays during the funeral. And that leads me into the characterization of Elektra here, because we talked about it a little bit. It's different from what we are used to in the comics. When you read the Miller comics, she's a lot more. She seems like she has a lot more mental issues going on. This is it feels different. But I also found out, partially thanks to Batman Online, but Elektra's story is actually closer to the character Echo than the Elektra in the comics. So I'll go into that in a bit. In the comics, Elektra was Matt's college girlfriend. Her father was killed by the authorities during a hostage situation. And so she goes off, gets training from the Hand, comes to New York, becomes an assassin who works for Kingpin. As you can tell, other than the death of the father, it's pretty different. Meanwhile, Echo is the daughter of Kingpin's business partner in the comics, as well as Matt Murdock's girlfriend. Kingpin ends up killing the dad, but lies to Echo that it was Daredevil, which is a weird thing in the comic, because in the comic he claims that Daredevil killed her dad 20 years ago when Daredevil hasn't been around for 20 years. But anyway, Echo now believes that Daredevil, not Kingpin, killed her dad, and so she goes on a path of vengeance against Daredevil without knowing he's her boyfriend Matt Murdock, including, as we see here, throwing a weapon into a picture representing Daredevil in the comic. It's a bag in the movie. She and Daredevil also have a fight on one of those seesaws on a playground in the comics.
Oh God.
Yeah. Except it makes way more sense in the comic, because they're in their costumes, right? They're having an actual fight here as opposed to a flirty one.
It's still goofy, man. Like he's getting fucked up by like a seesaw, man. Like, come on. What are we doing?
It works better in context. It's one of the comic parts of a whole.
Yeah. Is this in the Echo? Is this in the Echo series?
This is actually still a Daredevil when she was in
I mean the TV series. Like, did they adapt that TV series?
No, I don't think so. I think he's only there for like 5 minutes.
Okay.
Echo does kick Daredevil's ass for a bit until she finds out that it's Matt behind the mask and that she's been duped. And so that's very similar, I think, with Elektra. If anything, her story might be closer to Echo than Elektra in the comics. In the comics with Echo, this whole scene is what leads her to figure out that it was Kingpin who killed her dad, and then she goes to shoot Kingpin in the head, which leaves him blind, which is what got adapted into the MCU. They just didn't adapt any of the other stuff that led up to it as much.
That's okay.
Yeah. We already saw some of the stuff anyway in the 2003 movie.
That's
and
right.
So in this movie, we get Elektra versus Bullseye, and I'll have you cover this part. They do pretty well in doing a faithful adaptation of Bullseye killing her. So here are the here's the moments, right?
Definitely. Like just some of the wording of it and everything, and like the whole like that whole scene, like it's so I was watching a featurette on it where Frank Miller basically talked about it, and this kind of dark, but he was saying like with the whole Psy thing too, it's kind of like he said, like a sexual assault, like killing kind of thing is like what the subtext of it was supposed to be with the Psy going through it. Like very much like especially for that time, a very like mean-spirited kind of like killing of like a character, basically. Like what did you think of this moment? Like I thought it was pretty good. And just overall, like definitely showed him as like very sadistic, like killer, basically.
It's very dark and definitely does the whole like this is in Spider-Man type of feeling that they're trying to go. It's disturbing even more so in the director's cut, because the director's cut has him force himself kissing her when he stabbed her, which is not in the theatrical version. And also in the theatrical version, they both have him using the car to slit her throat, but I think in the theatrical version you don't see the side go all the way through into her, but not her clothes, just like in the comic. So I have that shot here. This is from the director's cut. I think the theatrical doesn't quite go all the way in showing that to you. So it's way more violent in the director's cut, makes Bullseye look even more disturbing. And so I think the actual portrayal of the death is well done. I just also think it shouldn't be in this movie. Like, I think that there's way too many storylines being shoved into here. And if there's another similarity between this and BVS, is that we have a character whose death or death of storyline is kind of shoved in here too early when it should have been in something else. But it's okay because that character is going to get resurrected into the next movie anyway with a different costume. So it's going to be we're going to make up for it. But still, I was like, yeah, this should have been split up. Like maybe it's movie 1 is Elektra, my college girlfriend, is back, but she's working for Kingpin. That's the main conflict. And then Daredevil 2 is Bullseye comes back, doesn't like the fact that Elektra's there, and then he kills her. Like something like that, just to space it out, develop this more, because when this happens in the comics, like he's had this whole history with her. They were in college together, then she came back and she's in several issues. Here, they went on like a couple dates. He's known her for like a week, and then this happened. Like it doesn't have the same effect.
Yeah, and like I was kind of talking to you about this off mic. It's one of those things where you kind of almost need 2 movies to really make this effective. Either that or make her a lot more of a character in this, where like she shows up way earlier and she's like a main focus, so that like that scene hits a little bit harder, because the way they have this set up, like it's just like you feel bad, but it's one of those things too where it's like, well, what did we think was going to happen? Because like also she had just started really training hard. Like she had some training before, but she went out to fight this guy who's like an assassin. The other one, it's a little bit more of a shock because like we'd seen her be like strong and formidable. So like this moment is kind of crazy to see too, because she is very competent in the comics versus like in this movie, I guess.
Yeah, because we never actually see her. Like the only time we really see her beat anybody is when she kind of beats Matt in the park.
Yeah, and that's like a play fight.
Yeah, there's no thing of her defeating anybody to show that she's got the skills. Like her skill set, she doesn't really get to show off until the spinoff. In terms of the Jennifer Garner version, compared to in the comics, is very well established that she's extremely deadly, and they don't really have that in here. It's like you said, it's sort of just like, what did you expect was going to happen? Especially because we have this more innocent version of her, and she's just become Elektra the assassin. She's just become somebody who wants to kill somebody. So it's too rushed. But we do get the death of her. He hears her heartbeat slow down, and then we go back to the church, which does lead to one of my favorite lines in the director's cut. In the theatrical version, he's just like, "This is who I tried, Father. This is who I am," which is just okay, but doesn't really relate much to the arc. In the director's cut, it's so much better because he brings up, the father tells him to ask God for mercy, and he brings up, everybody in my life has been taken from me. Now I'm supposed to ask God for mercy. People don't ask me for mercy. I mean, I don't ask God for mercy. People ask me. And I was like, oof.
Yeah, great stuff, man.
So I love that. Daredevil and Bullseye have a church fight, just like that's from Kevin Smith's Guardian Devil, so that's where that comes from. Also kind of feels a little 89-ish because we're in a cathedral type of place.
The bats coming out of there too. I was like, I had a note here. It's like, what is he, Batman? Where like the bats come out of the pipe organ thing. Yeah.
So that was cool. And then Daredevil letting Bullseye fall comes from the Last Hand comic, which is where Bullseye has, killed Elektra. So that's right out of the Miller comics as well. So stays very true to that. Daredevil then goes after Kingpin after Foggy helps Ben Urich get to Detective Manolis about this whole thing, and that it was Kingpin's right-hand man, Wesley, who committed this murder. And so if they can get to Wesley can then out Wilson Fisk as the Kingpin. So that kind of leads it all to this finale where he goes up against Kingpin, explains why the cops are after Kingpin at that point, because that's not covered in the theatrical movie. They're kind of just randomly out to get him at that point. And what was the other thing too with that? Oh yeah, the fight between Daredevil and Kingpin is extended in the director's cut. In the theatrical version, I think it's just like Kingpin throws him around and then that's it. it's the end. But this is where we get the whole Dance of the Devil in the Pale Moonlight type of thing, where he figures out that Fisk was behind his father's death. I mean, he kind of figured that out too with the whole Rose thing when Bullseye tells him. And I think that Rose thing might be another carryover for Man Without Fear, because there's this moment where Fisk kills his boss. He kills Don Rigoletto and then takes the guy's Rose. So it could be a carryover from that. And then Daredevil does the whole thing with the rain, with the sprinkler system, which is awesome. And then he does a
Yeah.
really badass thing where he takes out Kingpin's knees in a similar way that he takes out Slade, his father's killer in the comics, in Man Without Fear.
That is a
So,
hairy man.
yeah, it's a very hairy man there.
Like some Neil Adams stuff going on right there.
Yeah, he puts the Batman from Neil Adams to shame.
Yeah, seriously. That's a real man.
We just got here. Yeah. But this
Nice.
then leads into Kingpin threatening to out Matt, which then leads into a great line from Matt that I wish was in the Born Again show, where he's just like, "Go ahead, tell them you got beat by a blind man."
Yeah.
I was like, that's all the scene in Born Again needed, where the cops are like threatening him and just like, "What are you going to do? Tell people that this
Yeah,
blind man beat
speaking of
you up?"
Born Again, when he threw Bullseye or let Bullseye fall, definitely reminded me of that opening where
Yeah,
Bullseye fell into the thing, except this time he lands on the car, and I'm like, I mean, like, like he's all right. Like he'll be okay. Like he'll live, basically.
yeah, yeah. We see Bullseye scene in the hospital, which again is right out of the Frank Miller comic in terms of how he's wrapped up. The area around his nose is wrapped, but you can still see his eyes. Um, Though you can have his mouth so that Colin Farrell can say "bullseye" one last time.
Yeah.
This hospital scene is seen during this sort of ending voiceover part that's in the director's cut, whereas in the theatrical cut, it's put in the mid credits right before the calling song,
Mhm.
and it just works so well in the director's cut. We've got this awesome monologue from Affleck about violence and about vengeance, about justice, about evil men, like all the type of stuff that's just missing from the theatrical cut.
Mhm.
And again, Ben Urich just playing with hope and fear. You've got Urich telling him outside the church, like, "Hey, like I'm going to publish the story. I have to tell people who you are." And so that kind of it creates drama. It creates suspense when you get to Urich typing that article at the end, as opposed to the final movie where you might have forgotten at that point that Urich found out that Matt Murdock was Daredevil.
Yeah.
So
So a lot of stuff happens in this movie.
yeah.
But yeah.
And yeah, and the last thing is the final shot where he uses the billy club as like a grappling gun type of thing that is reminiscent as well of another issue from Daredevil Guardian Devil. So uh great shot, great final shot.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, like we talked about before, there was no sequel to this. There was talk about potentially doing Guardian Devil or Born Again, but we did end up seeing some of these people return to the roles. I think we can dive into this a little bit more in the Patreon, but one of those was Michael Clark Duncan. The late Michael Clark Duncan did get to become Kingpin again, just not in Daredevil, but in the Spider-Man animated series.
Yeah, definitely.
TV one.
He it was cool seeing him. Definitely
Mm,
like that show was kind of like a bridge between it was made Spider-Man when Spider-Man 1 was a thing.
mm.
And so like it was supposed to be a bridge between 1 and 2 that immediately got thrown out as soon as 2 happened, and a lot of it was basically retconned out. But
Yeah.
I remember this always being a cool little trivia bit, but being like, hey, like the Kingpin from Daredevil shows up. He's very different in this. Like in
Mm,
the comics, he uses his cane a lot to like
yeah.
do like different stuff. So it's a lot more comedic. The thing to look out for is basically that actor returns. The episode itself is fun if you guys have never seen it.
Yeah. Yeah. We can maybe talk a little about it a little bit more in the Patreon
Definitely.
episode, but it was cool. I'm glad I finally got to see it, and that Michael Clark Duncan's Kingpin got to return at least one final time.
Mhm.
I had at that time been like, oh, cool, that could mean that series is in the same world as the Daredevil show. I mean, the Daredevil movie. And then I saw the episode, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe not, maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
We also know Jennifer Garner obviously did return. If anything, she returned the most, even though she was killed off. But that's just kind of how it is in comic
again.
book movies. She returns in the Elektra movie, which does have Ben Affleck as Matt Murdock in a dream sequence in the director's cut, apparently. I think I have seen the scene. I just don't remember if I've seen the director's cut or the theatrical cut. But uh, Jennifer Garner, of course, came back once again in Deadpool and Wolverine, where they did not carry over the green eyes, but that's okay. And they may have considered, at least at some point, bringing Ben Affleck as Daredevil to be a part of it, because we have this concept art. And again, maybe it's because, concept art, they might just be playing around with stuff, but you can see Jennifer Garner's Elektra in red at the top, on top of a Deadpool T-Rex. And then there's Ghost Rider, but over here, he might blend in a little bit with all the Deadpools because he's also in red. But on the left here is the Ben Affleck Daredevil.
Yeah, it might have been them just playing around. But earlier when I said like, "Oh, she died again," doesn't she die in that movie too? Like in the Deadpool Wolverine, or
Ooh.
does she live? I forget.
I think she's stabbed, but I don't think we see that she's dead.
Yeah,
So I
correct
think
us
she's
in the
just wounded.
comments. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely like it would have been cool. Maybe he would have been in one of the group shots or something because there is because what's it, Bullseye is in the movie as
That's
well,
true.
but it's like a
Yeah.
different Bullseye, and so maybe it would have been one of those things where it was just like a variant or something. Like I
hmm
could see them maybe doing something like that in this.
hmm
Yeah,
Yeah, where it's like another guy or a stunt guy or one of Charlie Cox's stunt doubles in
yeah,
the suit.
basically.
So, yeah, instead we just got a mention of Daredevil dying and kind of a funny in joke about Jennifer Gardner and Ben Affleck's, marriage. But that
It's okay.
is, yeah, that's all right. So, yeah, there was no script for Daredevil 2, so we don't know what might have been, but there is a script for this movie, an earlier script for Daredevil that shows even more of what Mark Steven Johnson's vision was for this than what we saw in the director's cut. I've read it. Alex is going to read it. We're going to cover it next time. So until then, that is superhero stuff you should know. And big thanks to Dan, who is now our producer and editor. Congrats, Dan,
Woo!
on editing this type of stuff. You'll probably have to edit some some stuff from earlier in this. We'll figure it out. But Alex and I have added a bunch too from the visuals that we have here. But Dan is the primary one who puts together a lot of the visuals for us and has been doing a lot of our editing. So it is a team of all three of us. And here's another thing. It's been a long time since we've done this. We're bringing this back. Alex thought it was time to honor the Patreon patrons again, and I agreed. So, Alex, why don't you read the Patreon names?
All right, so here we go. So first we have Halsey D. Is that D Corbin? Like is that the
Halsey
full
D.
thing?
Corbin. Yeah.
Halsey D Corbin.
Yeah.
Slight rebellion off Madison. Alex of the What Meme podcast. Hey, that's me.
He's a jerk.
Yep. Choco Milk. Super Infra Man. Jeffrey Scott Richards. Slash SCCT Productions. Nick Noir. Renee Valdez. Derek Osborne. Jason Price. Rebellious Monkey 98. Cyber 6, Devin, Benjamin Vega, and Nolan Moore.
Nice. And thank you to our other supporters. These are supporters who maybe reach out to us, who engage with us often, people who have been part of the show before or contributed in some way. So that includes the late Matt Herring, rest in peace, Leander Nicholson, Neuverse Creative, Triple Threat Comics, The Bat Feed, Aaron Quinn, Logan Wood, M. Garcia 5159, Rob Ailing, Robert Schumann, Sparkageddon, Cookie Noms, Elijah B., Shamrock Balls, Ian H., Walter the Wobot, John Wells, Rye Guy, Jackson Putnam, Tway N., Stage Bat, W. Media, Paul G., Sean Willits, and Ruben A. The last couple we've met in person at conventions, and then hopefully, one day they'll meet you too, Alex.
Nice. Yeah,
So
that'd be fun.
Go over to patreon.com/superherostuffpod, where you mainly get the $5 tier or the $10 tier. On the $5 tier, you get early access to all of our videos and episodes, and you'll get exclusive episodes of us reacting, discussing, reviewing any of the latest news, trailers, all the type of stuff. And on the $10 monthly meetup, you'll get to meet and chat with Alex and me about all the latest superhero news, movies, and TV shows. Plus, you get to influence our show as we give you polls for you to vote on things like the thumbnails or what episodes to cover occasionally. And you all get the opportunity to submit questions for future guest interviews. So check that out. The money you pay in Patreon right now does not go to our pockets for us to spend on batarangs. Sorry, Alex. But it goes to paying Dan for the work that he does for us, and it goes to the StreamYard subscription that we use here that enables us to record this way. So thank you for your help and your support, Patreon supporters. Now, let's go to the comments. Alex, why don't you take this first one if you're able to read it?
Yeah,
from that. Cool.
sure. So this one is from John Wells 5414.
Mm.
It says, I feel like the first season would be very much a random villain of the week with Matt Murdock defending clients involved with the criminal investigation. A
Yeah,
lot of
sorry. This is
Tony,
about the Daredevil spin-off
yeah,
that was
yeah.
never made.
A lot of Tony Montana vibes, and Hitman, and with Fisk pulling the strings behind the curtain. If I were to go for more, if they were to go for more seasons, they would have probably brought in more of Daredevil's comic villains, or at least versions of them. The biggest one I could think of would be Punisher. And I'm sure they would talk and push for a spinoff featuring Castle as the main character. So,
Yeah.
like, what he's specifically referring to is that we were kind of speculating like what a show of this would be, and like what like we thought, and like this is good, like what he's talking about, like definitely like kind of like that Miami Vice kind of feel. I could see this basically being the thing where a lot of I don't know, you haven't seen as much of the 70s Spider-Man show, but that's kind of what they did, where it was very much more like just random one-off criminals, basically, kind of nondescript, and then like occasionally they'd like what he's saying here, they would have like hitmen, that kind of thing, and then like, you know, some big overarching villain possibly. I could definitely see this. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can see that as well. Because we were already speculating on that one dude being Bullseye or becoming Bullseye later
Mm-hmm.
on. And the Punisher thing, at first I was just like, yeah, but they had the Dolph Lundgren thing. And then when I was looking it up, I commented too, the company that was behind the Incredible Hulk TV movies was the same one that did 1989 Punisher with Dolph Lundgren.
Mm-hmm.
So they had the rights. They could have done this and had, they probably wouldn't have gotten Lundgren to do it, but maybe have like tied it in some way as like, oh, this is the TV version of him with the motorcycle and the you know, the trench coat, that type of stuff, or the knives with the skulls on them. Like that could have been
I love
really
that
cool.
movie, so
Yeah,
you know, like I'm down for any version of that, basically.
yeah, that'd be cool. It'd be a cool
Yeah.
way because uh, obviously we've got Charlie Cox and John Bernthal now, but in '89 we had two different versions. We had two of these versions of the characters. We got the Daredevil from Rex Smith in Trial of the Incredible Hulk and Dolph Lundgren as Punisher in the '89 Punisher movie. So you can kind of sort of imagine or speculate that they could be in the same universe. It's kind of funny to think about Punisher '89 existing in the Bill Bixby universe, but
It would be
maybe.
toned down, probably. If it was a show, though, there's no
Oh
way
yeah,
they'd go that far. It'd be very toned down. But yeah,
yeah,
I could see
no, for
some
sure.
version of that, basically.
It'd be like the original Equalizer,
Yeah. Thank you
which
for your
was,
comment, though.
yeah. Thank you, John Wells. All right, I'll read this next one. John Jones 6764. We like Johns, I guess. Uh,
Yeah.
Oh, the episode with the other Hulk, he says, is called The First. So
Hmm.
that's bringing that up because I know, Alex, you mentioned that one. Such
Yeah.
an amazing episode. And David being stuck in between changing was Prometheus. Radiation from a meteor causes him to get stuck in the Demi Hulk stage. Another fantastic episode of the series.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for your tutelage, as Andrew would say.
Yeah. Definitely.
All right. And this last one, I'll have you read it.
This is from Crimson Cartoonist, cool username. And it's please do Superman flyby eventually. Love the show. Well, we got some potential good news for this commenter, don't we, Ben?
We're going to do it.
Yeah.
You want to
Look
read
forward to
Superman
that.
Flyby? We'll read Superman Flyby. We'll do it in the lead up to the James Gunn Superman in July. So that's on the docket.
Definitely. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. And thank you for your super, Crimson Cartoonist, who sent us $1.99 on that episode.
Appreciate it.
That all goes to Dan anyway. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Nice.
All right. I'll let you plug your shows.
So, I'm gonna try to keep this as brief as possible. I got a lot of stuff. Some of the things I was gonna add more or two more thumbnails, but I'm just gonna go ahead and go through this. Obviously, you see in that top corner right there on the left, flashbacks, a Flash rewatch podcast. You heard me earlier mention in the Patreon section someone named Choco Milk, Brady helps me co-host that along with my co-host Will, who will be coming back pretty soon. We're all three going to be
Nice.
doing it. Basically, it's the CW. Like we do a rewatch podcast of the CW show, and we on our off episodes cover stuff like the '90s show, the comics. We recently actually, in terms of comics, we covered the Flash of Two Worlds. So like that was one of the ones we covered recently. But yeah, first time doing a rewatch podcast, so it's a bit of a learning curve, but definitely check that out. Kind of a similar vibe to this, kind of like informative, but also kind of laid back hangout vibes. Is how I describe it. And then another one, this one right here. Night of the Batman. Me and my wife do that. She will tell you it is her show. And yeah, so we talk everything Batman. It's actually a rebooted version of one of my first YouTube review shows, and we cover just everything Batman, comics, movies, just whatever. And then the last one, or near the last one at the bottom, is Review More Girls. Her and her cousin do a rewatch podcast about Gilmore Girls, and it's really fun. And I also have Tangential Exchange. Me and my friend drink and kind of just most laid back show. We kind of drink and just talk about random stuff, basically. And then What Mean is like a vague kind of review show. We talk about basically everything that will eventually come back. That's where the Alex of the What Mean part of my username comes from on the Patreon. But yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
So yeah, Ben.
Awesome. Yeah. If you guys want coverage on Batman Resurrection, the novel by John Jackson Miller, we did 2 episodes of that on Night of the Batman. I guessed it on that before Alex became a co-host here, and we did a review episode where I went into the Easter eggs and an interview with John Jackson Miller himself. So if you guys are looking for coverage from that, we did it already.
Yeah.
Maybe not under the formal superhero stuff you should know name, but we did it. We would just be doing a repeat of that if we did it here. So yeah, you can check that out at Night of the Batman for sure.
Definitely.
Nice. So let's go into my plugs. Don't worry, Alex, about keeping it short for yours, because I definitely go long on mine. You can check out my work on Neuverse Creative, where we did 2 different versions of Batman Forever, with Batman 3 and Batman Forever, the Schumacher cut. These are audio dramas I adapted myself from the original scripts of the film. So these contain the full Bruce Wayne subplot that was deleted. Batman 3 performs it in the style of the Tim Burton films, while Batman Forever, of course, does it like the Schumacher movie. I voice act as Michael Keaton in Batman 3 and Val Kilmer, rest in peace, in Batman Forever. And you'll be hearing me as both Keaton and Kilmer in different audio dramas coming up, with our next Kilmer one dedicated to the actor's memory. So I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully people see that as a way to honor him. If you'd like to check out my original stuff, check out my indie comic series, Alter Ego. This is a mix of Batman No Man's Land with X-Men and The Departed. 5 families of supervillains take over Detroit, and our main character goes undercover as a henchman to eliminate them one by one. The first 2 issues are on Amazon, and you can get a variant cover of issue 1 done by Alex himself. That's the one that you see in the middle there. He did an excellent variant cover of The Saint. And if you check that out, you can let us know who you think he based that off of, who his casting choice was for The Saint. So
it's a mystery.
Next is you can check out my manga Musashi and Son, based on the real-life samurai Miyamoto Musashi and his adopted son Yori. Think of this as a samurai Batman and Robin as they go from village to village, hunting down the bandits that murdered the boy's father. Volume 1 is also available on Amazon. Volume 2 is currently in production. The link is in my, basically the link is in the description to my Amazon author page that has all of these available. And you can also get merch for both comics at TeePublic. I'm wearing my Alter Ego shirt as always. You'll see me wear this a lot, but Musashi and Son merch is available as well. And eventually I'll be switching off between the 2 shirts.
I might have to get one of those. This is gorgeous artwork, man. I know I always say it when I say it, but like gorgeous stuff, man.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Ira V, she did a great job.
Yeah.
Lastly, coming up later this year, this is upcoming, Alter Ego issue 3, where my main character Jace gets to move forward with his plans to manipulate the supervillains against each other. And on top of that, I have an animated movie coming out, directed by our friend of the podcast, Aaron Quinn. It is a faithful adaptation of the James O'Barr graphic novel, The Crow, that I co-wrote with Aaron, who will also be animating it. And I will be the voice of the Crow. So really looking forward to that one.
Speaking of gorgeous, dude, that crow, like the fallen angel thing, great stuff, man. Great stuff.
Yeah, props to Aaron on that one. My jaw dropped on that. I was like, this could easily have been a variant cover of the actual graphic novel. This could have been James O'Barr himself doing it.
Definitely.
So that wraps it up. Until next time, guys, we want you to do us a favor. We want you to tell all your friends about us. What are we? I'm Ben Wan.
I'm Alex Ramsey.
And this is superhero stuff
you should know.
Nailed it.